My aunt told everyone I was just after the money, then screamed when she found out Grandma left me everything. The funeral was 3 days ago. I'd flown in from Portland, taken unpaid time off from the hospital where I work night shifts, and slept on my friend Becca's couch because I couldn't afford a hotel. My Aunt Diane showed up in head-to-toe Chanel, her third husband trailing behind. She made a scene at the reception. Loud enough for everyone to hear, she announced that I'd barely visited Grandma in her final years, that I was only there because I wanted the house, the savings, the jewelry. Some people, she said, staring directly at me, only show up when there's something to gain. I didn't respond, just stood there holding my paper plate while distant cousins whispered. The truth? I'd visited Grandma every Sunday for 5 years. I'd moved her into assisted living, sorted her medications, attended every doctor's appointment. My aunt had sent a Christmas card. Once. When Grandma's dementia got bad, she'd forget my name but remember my perfume. She'd light up when I walked in, even if she thought I was her sister or some friend from 1952. I never corrected her, just sat and listened to her stories, the same ones every week. Meanwhile, Aunt Diane posted Facebook tributes about being an amazing daughter. The comments overflowed with condolences about her devastating loss. The lawyer's office was downtown, all dark wood and leather chairs. Aunt Diane arrived early, practically vibrating with anticipation. She'd already started planning. New kitchen, European vacation, maybe a boat. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, opened the will and started reading. Standard stuff at first. Then he got to the big one. To my granddaughter, who showed up every Sunday without fail, who never made me feel like a burden, I leave my entire estate. The silence was deafening. Aunt Diane's face went from confused to red to purple. That's impossible, she hissed. I'm her daughter. There's more, Mr. Patterson interrupted. He continued reading. To my daughter Diane, who visited once in 5 years, who only called when she needed money, I leave this message. You taught me that blood doesn't make you family. Showing up does. My aunt stood so fast her chair fell backward. She started screaming about fraud, about manipulation, threatening lawsuits and criminal charges. I just sat there as Mr. Patterson handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a letter in Grandma's shaky handwriting, detailing every broken promise, every missed birthday, every time my aunt had asked for money and disappeared. As my aunt was escorted out still screaming, Mr. Patterson mentioned one more thing. There's a separate trust your grandmother established 6 months ago. Quite substantial. But there's a condition attached. He glanced at his assistant, who quietly closed the conference room door. Your aunt filed a conservatorship petition 3 weeks before your grandmother died, he continued, claiming incompetence. If it had gone through, everything would have gone to her as legal guardian. My blood ran cold. Your grandmother knew, Mr. Patterson said. She left evidence. Documentation. Recordings. Things that suggest your aunt's involvement went beyond legal maneuvering. He slid a flash drive across the table. Before you accept this inheritance, you need to know what's on here, because once you do, there's no going back. I stared at the small black device sitting between us. My hand trembled as I reached for it. What kind of evidence? I asked. Mr. Patterson's expression didn't change. The kind that could send someone to prison. I picked up the flash drive. It felt impossibly heavy. Your grandmother was sharper than anyone gave her credit for, he continued. Even with the dementia, she had moments of absolute clarity. She used those moments wisely. How long have you known about this? 6 months. She came to my office one afternoon, completely lucid, said she needed to protect you from something terrible. We spent 3 hours going through everything she documented. I clutched the flash drive tighter. And you waited until now to tell me? Those were her instructions. She wanted you to have the choice. Accept the inheritance as is, or see what's really been happening. Behind him, the assistant shifted uncomfortably. There's more, Mr. Patterson added. Your grandmother installed hidden cameras in her apartment 4 months ago. She recorded everything. My stomach dropped. Everything? Every conversation, every visit, every phone call she could capture. He paused, including several with your aunt. The room felt smaller suddenly. Outside, I could hear my aunt still yelling in the hallway, her husband trying to calm her down. I need to see it, I said. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly. I figured you would. But understand, once you watch those recordings, you can't unknow what you'll learn. And depending on what you decide to do with that information, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Your aunt has powerful friends. Her husband's family owns half the commercial real estate in this city. If you pursue this, they'll come at you with everything they have. I thought about Grandma sitting alone in that apartment, confused and scared, installing cameras because she knew something was wrong, knew her own daughter was planning something. I want to see everything. Mr. Patterson handed me a folder. These are the access codes. I'd recommend reviewing the materials privately, with someone you trust. I stood, legs shaky. Is that it? Not quite. He pulled out another document. Your grandmother also left you this. It was a handwritten letter, sealed in an envelope with my name on it. Her handwriting was steadier here, written before the dementia had gotten bad. Read it before you watch the recordings, Mr. Patterson said quietly. She wanted you to. I left the office through a side exit, avoiding my aunt who was still arguing with the security guard in the lobby. My rental car was parked 2 blocks away. I made it there before my hands started shaking too badly to hold the keys. Becca found me sitting in the driver's seat 20 minutes later, staring at the sealed envelope. Hey, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. I saw your aunt being escorted out. Figured you might need backup. I handed her the flash drive. Grandma left evidence. About my aunt. Becca's eyes widened. Evidence of what? I don't know yet. I turned the envelope over in my hands. But it's bad enough that the lawyer warned me about consequences. You going to open it? I tore the seal. Inside were 3 pages, front and back, in Grandma's careful script. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you know about the recordings. I'm sorry to burden you with this, but there's no one else I trust. Your aunt has been stealing from me for 3 years. Not just money, though there's plenty of that. She's been manipulating my medications, confusing me deliberately, trying to make me seem incompetent. I started noticing the gaps 6 months ago. Days I couldn't remember. Times I'd wake up and hours had passed. At first I thought it was just the dementia getting worse, but then I'd find my pill bottles rearranged. Medications I didn't recognize mixed in with my regular prescriptions. I became paranoid, I'll admit. Started writing everything down. Every pill I took, every visitor, every phone call. The patterns emerged quickly. Your aunt visits every Tuesday afternoon. By Tuesday evening, I can barely remember my own name. It wears off by Wednesday morning, but by then, I've lost another day. I confronted her once, asked her directly what she was giving me. She cried, said I was confused, that the dementia was making me paranoid. Then she called my doctor and tried to have me committed. That's when I knew I needed proof. I installed the cameras myself, hired a private investigator with money I'd hidden from her, documented everything. It took weeks to gather what I needed, and some days I barely remembered why I was doing it, but I kept notes. Reminded myself every morning of what I was fighting for. The truth is worse than I imagined. She's not just stealing money or trying to have me declared incompetent. She's actively trying to kill me, slowly, carefully, in ways that would look natural for an elderly woman with dementia. I'm telling you this because you need to understand what you're up against. Your aunt is desperate. Her third husband is bankrupt. They've been living off credit and my money for 2 years. If she doesn't get the inheritance, they lose everything. The recordings will show you everything. What she's been giving me, how she's been forging my signature, the conversations she's had with her husband about accelerating my decline. I won't lie to you, sweetheart. Going forward with this will destroy what's left of our family. Your cousins will turn on you. Friends will take sides. The scandal will be enormous. But if you don't, she'll get away with it. And she'll do it again. Maybe to someone else's grandmother. Maybe to you someday when you're old and vulnerable. The choice is yours. I've left you everything you need to pursue justice if you want it. But I'll love you just as much if you choose to walk away and live your life. Just promise me one thing. Whatever you decide, don't let her make you small. Don't let her steal your joy the way she tried to steal my life. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry for leaving you with this burden. Forever your grandma. I read it 3 times before I could speak. What does it say? Becca asked gently. I handed it to her. Watched her face change as she read. Holy shit, she whispered. Your aunt was poisoning her? That's what Grandma thought. Says there's proof on the recordings. Becca looked at the flash drive in her hand like it was radioactive. You have to go to the police. With what? A letter from a woman with dementia? They'll say she was confused, paranoid, that I'm making this up to justify the inheritance. Then what are you going to do? I started the car. Watch the recordings. All of them. Then decide. We drove back to Becca's apartment in silence. She lived in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Her girlfriend was at work, giving us privacy. I set up my laptop on the kitchen table. The flash drive had dozens of video files, organized by date. I started with the oldest one, from 4 months ago. The video opened on Grandma's living room, the angle wide enough to capture the entire space. Grandma sat in her favorite chair, doing a crossword puzzle. She looked good, alert, more like herself than I'd seen her in months. Then the door opened, and my aunt walked in. Mom, hi! Grandma looked up, surprised. Diane, what are you doing here? Can't a daughter visit her mother? My aunt leaned down to kiss Grandma's cheek. I brought your favorite cookies. They chatted for a few minutes. Normal stuff. Grandma asked about my aunt's husband, about her kids. My aunt answered with practiced ease. Then, oh, I almost forgot. Dr. Reynolds called. He wanted me to adjust your medications. Grandma frowned. I just saw him last week. He didn't mention anything. Well, you know how forgetful you've been, Mom. Maybe you just don't remember. I remember perfectly well. We discussed keeping everything the same. My aunt's smile tightened. Mom, please, we've talked about this. You need to trust the doctors. She pulled a pill bottle from her purse. I watched Grandma's expression shift from confusion to something else. Fear. I don't want to take new pills, Grandma said firmly. I want to call Dr. Reynolds myself. The phone is right there. Call him. My aunt gestured toward the phone on the side table. Grandma reached for it. Her hand was steady. My aunt's mask slipped for just a second. Her jaw clenched. Then she forced the smile back. Actually, you know what? Let me call him. Save you the trouble. She picked up the phone and dialed. Had an entire conversation with someone she called Dr. Reynolds, explaining that Mom was being difficult about her medication adjustments. Except I knew Dr. Reynolds' voice. I'd attended dozens of appointments with him. That wasn't him on the phone. Grandma seemed to realize it too. She sat back in her chair, watching my aunt with narrow eyes. Take 2 of these now, my aunt said, holding out pills and a glass of water. I'll check on you tomorrow. No. Mom. I said no, Diane. Get out of my house. My aunt's expression went cold. We both know you're not competent to make these decisions anymore. If you won't cooperate, I'll have to file for conservatorship. Is that what you want? The threat hung in the air. Finally, Grandma took the pills, swallowed them with water. My aunt watched her do it, then smiled. Good. I'll see you next week. She left. The door closed. Grandma sat perfectly still for about 30 seconds. Then she stood, walked calmly to the bathroom, and I heard her vomit. She'd hidden the pills in her cheek. I paused the video, hands shaking. That was just the first visit, Becca said quietly. There are 40 more files on here. I clicked on the next one. It was worse. Over the course of weeks, I watched my aunt systematically gaslight Grandma, convince her she was losing her mind, mix unknown pills in with her regular medications when Grandma wasn't looking, make phone calls to lawyers about conservatorship while Grandma slept in the next room. In one video, my aunt's husband appeared. They spoke in low voices, thinking Grandma was asleep. How much longer? he asked. Couple of months. She's declining faster now. The new dosage is working. You're sure it won't show up in an autopsy? Who's going to request an autopsy? Old woman with dementia dies peacefully in her sleep. It happens every day. They laughed. I had to stop the video. Ran to Becca's bathroom and threw up. When I came back, Becca had her phone out. I'm calling the police. Wait. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Not yet. Are you insane? You just watched them admit to murder. Attempted murder. She didn't succeed. Only because your grandma was smart enough to fight back. I sank into a chair. My whole body felt numb. If we go to the police now, what do we have? Videos that could be dismissed as a confused old woman's paranoia. A letter that could be written off the same way. We need more. More? What more do you need? Proof of what she was giving grandma. Medical records showing the unexplained symptoms. Something concrete that ties my aunt to deliberate harm. Becca stared at me. You're thinking like a nurse. I am a nurse. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. No room for doubt. No way for her to wiggle out of it. I spent the rest of the day watching videos and taking notes. Documented every visit. Every pill I saw my aunt give grandma. Every conversation about money, about conservatorship, about how to make the whole thing look natural. By evening, I had a timeline. My aunt had started stealing small amounts 3 years ago. Just a few hundred here and there, forging grandma's signature on checks. When grandma started getting suspicious, my aunt began the medication manipulation, making grandma seem more confused than she was, creating evidence of incompetence. The conservatorship petition had been the final move. Once my aunt had legal control, she could drain the accounts openly, and grandma would die quietly in some nursing home where no one paid attention. Except grandma had figured it out. Set her trap perfectly. The last video file was dated 3 weeks before grandma died. She was alone in her apartment, speaking directly to the camera. Hi, sweetheart. If you're watching this, then I'm gone and you have all the evidence. I hope it's enough. Her voice was weak but clear. She knew she was dying. I stopped trying to fight the pills 2 weeks ago. I'm tired. And honestly, I'd rather go on my own terms than let her put me in some facility. Tears ran down her face. But I needed to make sure she didn't win, that she didn't get to profit from my death. So I changed the will. Moved my money, set everything up so you'd have what you need to stop her. She leaned closer to the camera. I'm sorry to put this on you, but you're strong enough. You've always been strong enough. Don't let her scare you. Don't let her make you doubt yourself. She smiled. That familiar smile I'd seen every Sunday for 5 years. I love you. Now go get her. The video ended. I sat in silence for a long time. What are you going to do? Becca finally asked. I ejected the flash drive and tucked it in my pocket. I'm going to do exactly what she asked. The next morning, I made an appointment with a detective friend from the hospital. His name was Leo, and he'd worked with our ER on domestic violence cases. I trusted him. We met at a coffee shop far from my aunt's neighborhood. I need your advice, I said, sliding the flash drive across the table. Unofficially, Leo raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. My grandmother died 3 weeks ago. Before she did, she left me evidence that my aunt was trying to kill her. His expression shifted immediately. Professional. What kind of evidence? Video recordings, 4 months worth. My aunt admitting to forging signatures, stealing money, and poisoning grandma to make her seem incompetent. Leo picked up the flash drive. You've watched them? All of them. And? It's exactly what she said it was. Clear admission of intent, conspiracy with her husband, discussion of making it look like natural causes. Leo was quiet for a moment. Then, why come to me? Why not go straight to the department? Because I want to do this right. No mistakes. No technicalities she can use to get out of it. Smart. He pocketed the flash drive. Give me 48 hours. I'll review everything and put together a case file. If it's as solid as you say, we'll bring in the DA. I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion. Thank you. Leo touched my hand briefly. Your grandmother was lucky to have you. Those 48 hours felt like an eternity. I went through the motions at work, checking vitals and changing IVs while my mind raced through everything that could go wrong. My aunt could flee. Her husband's family could pressure the DA to drop the case. The videos could be deemed inadmissible. On the third day, Leo called. We need to meet. Bring Mr. Patterson. My stomach dropped. Why? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But this is bigger than either of us anticipated. We met at the DA's office that afternoon. Mr. Patterson brought 2 associates. Leo had the entire financial crimes unit with him. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Victoria, who looked like she ate defense attorneys for breakfast. I've reviewed the evidence, she said without preamble. It's extraordinary. We have video confession, pattern of behavior, financial documentation. This is the strongest elder abuse case I've seen in 20 years. So you'll prosecute? I asked. Absolutely. But I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Your aunt will hire the best lawyers money can buy. This will be ugly. Public. Your entire family history will be dissected in court. I understand. Victoria smiled grimly. Good. Because we're not just charging her with theft and fraud. We're going for attempted murder. The room went silent. The medical examiner reviewed the footage. Victoria continued. Identified 3 separate substances your aunt administered that had no legitimate medical purpose. Combined with your grandmother's medical records showing unexplained symptoms during the exact time frame of these visits, we have a strong case. Mr. Patterson leaned forward. What about the husband? Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, elder abuse. He's on the recordings admitting to knowledge and participation. I thought about my aunt's husband, always smiling blandly in the background, counting money he hadn't earned. When? I asked. We arrest them tomorrow morning. I wanted you to know first so you could prepare. Prepare for what? The fallout. Your family will be contacted. The media will pick this up. Be ready. I drove to my aunt's house that evening, not to warn her, just to see it one last time before everything changed. It was a massive colonial in the wealthiest part of town, bought with money my aunt had stolen from Grandma over the years. The driveway held a Mercedes and a BMW. Through the windows, I could see crystal chandeliers, all of it built on lies. I wondered if Grandma had ever been invited here, if my aunt had ever felt guilty, even for a moment. Probably not. I took a photo of the house, sent it to Becca with a message. Last night before the storm. She replied immediately. You okay? Getting there. The next morning, I was at the hospital when Leo called. It's done. Both in custody. I excused myself to the supply closet and called Becca. They arrested her. Holy shit. How do you feel? I didn't know how to answer that. Relief, terror, grief, satisfaction. All of it mixed together until I couldn't separate one feeling from another. I feel like Grandma can rest now, I finally said. The news broke that afternoon. Local station first, then it spread. Prominent real estate family charged with elder abuse and attempted murder. My phone started ringing immediately. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Grandma's friends from church. People who'd been at the funeral. Who'd listened to my aunt's lies about me being a gold digger. I didn't answer any of them. The only call I took was from Mr. Patterson. Your aunt posted bail 2 hours ago, he said. $500,000. Her husband's family put up their commercial properties as collateral. So she's free, for now, but the judge imposed strict conditions. No contact with you, no access to any of your grandmother's assets, and she has to surrender her passport. That night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. I'm your family. You're throwing me away over money. I showed it to Leo the next day. Violation of the no contact order, he said immediately. Forward it to me. Will it matter? Every violation matters. We're building a pattern. The text kept coming over the next week. Sometimes from my aunt's number, sometimes from numbers I didn't recognize. Always the same themes. I was ungrateful. I'd manipulated Grandma. I was tearing the family apart over greed. I documented every single one and sent them to Leo. Then my cousins started posting on social media. Long threads about family loyalty. About how I'd stolen their grandmother's money. About how their mother was innocent and being railroaded by a vindictive niece who wanted everything for herself. The comment sections filled with people who didn't know the whole story, taking sides based on whoever posted most convincingly. I didn't respond. Just archived everything. Becca found me one night scrolling through the worst of them, tears streaming down my face. Why are you doing this to yourself? She asked gently. Because I need to remember why I'm doing this. When it gets hard, when I want to quit, I need to remember that these people chose her. Even without knowing the truth, they chose to believe the worst about me. That says more about them than it does about you. I know, but it still hurts. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I tried to return to normal life, worked my shifts, paid my bills, pretended my world wasn't imploding. Mr. Patterson called regularly with updates. The DA was building an airtight case. They'd subpoenaed medical records, financial statements, phone records, everything. Your aunt's lawyers are already trying to negotiate a plea deal, he told me. What kind of deal? Return half the stolen money, plead to lesser charges, minimal jail time. Absolutely not. That's what I told them. The DA agrees. We're going to trial. 3 weeks before the hearing, someone broke into Becca's apartment. We'd been at dinner when it happened. Came home to find the door kicked in, the place ransacked. Did they take anything? The responding officer asked. I looked around. My laptop was still there. Becca's jewelry, the TV. Then I realized the folder with copies of Grandma's letter was gone. The backup flash drive I'd hidden in my suitcase. Gone. They took the evidence. I told Leo when he arrived. He didn't seem concerned. We have the originals. Everything's been submitted to the DA. This was just intimidation. But it worked. I couldn't sleep that night. Kept imagining someone watching the apartment, waiting for another chance. Becca's girlfriend installed security cameras the next day. Got a deadbolt for the door. But the damage was done. I felt violated. Unsafe. Come stay with me and Hannah, Becca offered. At least until the trial is over. I refused. I'm not going to let them scare me off. But I was scared. Terrified, actually. Not just of another break-in, but of what my aunt was capable of. She'd tried to kill her own mother. What would she do to me? 2 weeks before the hearing, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then, you should be careful walking to your car at night. Lots of things can happen in parking garages. I hung up and immediately called Leo. That's a threat, he said. I'm assigning protective detail. You can't be serious. Your aunt is facing 20 years. Her husband is looking at 15. They're desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. For the next 2 weeks, I had an off-duty officer shadow me to and from work. It should have made me feel safer. Instead, it made everything feel more real, more dangerous. The night before the preliminary hearing, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Grandma, about all those Sundays together, the way she'd smile when I walked in, how she'd held my hand during the bad days. I wondered if she'd known it would come to this, if she'd understood what she was asking of me when she left that letter. Probably. Grandma had always understood more than people gave her credit for. The courtroom was packed, media in the back rows, family members on both sides, my aunt's lawyers in expensive suits, the DA's team looking sharp and prepared. I sat behind the prosecution table, hands folded in my lap. My aunt was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair was unwashed, no makeup. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When she saw me, her eyes filled with hate, pure, undiluted hatred. I stared back, didn't look away. The judge entered and everyone stood. What followed was 3 hours of legal arguments I barely understood. Motions, objections, discussions about admissibility and precedent. But when Victoria started presenting evidence, I understood perfectly. She played the videos. Not all of them, just enough to establish the pattern. My aunt's voice filled the courtroom, talking about dosages and timing and making it look natural. Several people in the gallery gasped. My cousin sat frozen, faces pale. The judge's expression never changed, just watched everything with careful attention. When it was over, the defense attorney stood. Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. These videos could have been doctored. The medications mentioned could have been legitimate prescriptions. Without the decedent here to testify. The decedent left extensive documentation, Victoria interrupted, including a detailed letter explaining exactly what was happening, written during a period when her medical records show she was lucid and competent. A letter from a woman with dementia, a woman whose competency was deliberately undermined by the defendant. We have medical experts ready to testify that the symptoms of dementia shown in medical records correlate exactly with the dates of the defendant's visits. The defense attorney sat down, looking frustrated. The judge reviewed his notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I'm binding this over for trial. Bail is revoked. The courtroom erupted. My aunt started screaming. Her husband tried to stand and was forced back down by court officers. This is a travesty! My aunt shrieked as they led her out. I'm her daughter! Her daughter! She was my mother! The judge banged his gavel. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. But my aunt couldn't stop. You'll pay for this! All of you! She was crazy and confused and you're all believing her lies. They dragged her out still screaming. I sat perfectly still, watching them take her away. Victoria touched my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. Couldn't speak. This is just the beginning, she warned. Trial won't be for another few months. It's going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. The media coverage exploded. Cable news picked it up. Daughter tries to murder mother for inheritance. It became a nationwide story. My face was everywhere. People recognized me at the grocery store, at work. Some offered sympathy. Others accused me of lying, of fabricating evidence, of being motivated by greed. I stopped reading comments online, deleted social media, just focused on getting through each day. Work became my sanctuary. In the ER, nobody cared about my family drama. They just needed someone to stop the bleeding or start an IV or hold their hand during a panic attack. I was good at that. Had always been good at showing up when it mattered. 3 months later, the trial began. I'd been prepped extensively by Victoria and her team. How to answer questions, how to stay calm under cross-examination, how to handle my aunt's lawyers trying to paint me as a gold digger who manipulated a confused old woman. They're going to come at you hard, Victoria warned. Attack your character. Suggest you coerced your grandmother into changing the will. You need to stay composed. Easier said than done. The first week was jury selection. 12 people who'd never met grandma or my aunt or me. 12 people who'd decide whether my aunt went to prison. I studied their faces. Tried to gauge who might be sympathetic, who might be skeptical. One woman, maybe 60, reminded me of grandma. Same soft eyes. Same careful way of listening. I hoped she made it through selection. She did. Week 2 was opening arguments. Victoria stood before the jury and laid out the entire case. Calm, methodical. She showed them the videos, walked them through the timeline, explained how my aunt had systematically stolen from and poisoned her own mother. The defense attorney tried a different approach. This is a family dispute, he said. A daughter concerned about her aging mother. A granddaughter who wanted the inheritance. What you're going to see is a series of unfortunate misunderstandings blown out of proportion by grief and greed. I wanted to scream, but I sat there, hands folded, face neutral. The prosecution called its first witness, Dr. Reynolds, Grandma's actual doctor. He testified that Grandma had been stable on her medications, that there was no medical reason to add or adjust anything, that he'd never called my aunt with new prescriptions. In fact, he said, I noted several times in her chart that I was concerned about unexplained cognitive declines that didn't match the expected progression of her dementia. Did you investigate these concerns? Victoria asked. I ordered additional tests, but by the time we could schedule them, Mrs. Harrison had passed away. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brief. Isn't it true that dementia progression can be unpredictable? In general, yes. But Mrs. Harrison's case showed a very specific pattern. Rapid decline after family visits, then improvement when the visits stopped. Next came the forensic accountant who'd analyzed Grandma's financial records. He'd found $127,000 in forged checks over 3 years, wire transfers to my aunt's accounts, cash withdrawals that corresponded with her visits. The pattern is clear, he testified. Systematic theft disguised as ordinary family financial support. My aunt's lawyer tried to argue that Grandma had given the money willingly. Where's the documentation of these gifts? The accountant replied, if Mrs. Harrison was willingly supporting her daughter, why forge the signatures? Why create false records? The lawyer had no answer. Then came the medical examiner. She'd reviewed Grandma's autopsy and the videos, identified the pills my aunt had been administering as a combination of sedatives and antipsychotics that would create symptoms mimicking severe dementia. In someone who already had mild cognitive impairment, she explained, these medications would create a rapid and dramatic decline, confusion, memory loss, inability to function independently. Could these medications be fatal? Victoria asked. In the doses shown on the video? Potentially yes, especially combined with Mrs. Harrison's existing medications. The risk of respiratory depression, cardiac events, or aspiration would be significantly elevated. The defense attorney stood. But Mrs. Harrison died of natural causes, correct? The death certificate lists cardiac arrest. Yes. But cardiac arrest is what kills everyone eventually. The question is, what caused the cardiac arrest? In Mrs. Harrison's case, the contributing factors are suspicious, but not definitive? Not without blood work done immediately after death, which wasn't performed because no one suspected foul play at the time. The defense attorney seized on this. So you can't definitively say my client caused her mother's death? No, but I can definitively say she administered medications that placed her mother at significant risk of death. It went on like this for weeks. Expert after expert, document after document. I testified on day 12. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking to my own execution. My aunt stared at me the entire time, her eyes burning with rage. Victoria asked me about my relationship with Grandma, about the Sunday visits, the doctor appointments, the hours spent listening to the same stories over and over. Why did you do it? She asked. Visit so faithfully when it must have been exhausting? I looked at the jury. Because she was my grandmother. Because she'd spent my entire childhood showing up for me. It was my turn to show up for her. Did you expect to inherit anything? No, I assumed everything would go to my aunt. She was Grandma's only child. When did you learn about the changed will? At the reading. Same time my aunt did. How did that make you feel? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Surprised, grateful, but mostly sad that Grandma felt she needed to protect me like that. The defense attorney took over for cross-examination. Isn't it true, he began, that you work night shifts at a hospital and struggle financially? I work night shifts because they pay slightly more. And yes, like most nurses, I live paycheck to paycheck. So you needed money? I need money to pay rent and buy groceries, but I've never needed it enough to hurt someone for it. But you knew your grandmother was wealthy? Everyone in the family knew that? And you visited her every single Sunday for 5 years. That's quite dedicated for someone who supposedly expected nothing in return. I met his eyes. I visited because I loved her. Because she raised me when my parents were too busy working. Because she came to every school play and dance recital and graduation. Because she was there. But you must have hoped. I hoped she'd live forever. That's what I hoped. Not for her money. For more time. My voice cracked on the last word. The defense attorney backed off, probably realizing he was making me sympathetic. Victoria stood for redirect. Did you know about the cameras your grandmother installed? No, not until after she died. Did you know she was documenting your aunt's visits? No. So when you visited every Sunday, you had no idea any of this was being recorded? None. You just showed up because you cared about her? Yes. I was excused after 2 hours of testimony, walked back to my seat on shaking legs. The woman who reminded me of Grandma smiled at me from the jury box. I smiled back. The defense put on its case the following week. My aunt didn't testify. Her lawyers probably knew she'd fall apart under cross-examination. Instead, they called character witnesses. Friends who said my aunt was devoted to her mother. Neighbors who'd seen her at Grandma's apartment. Victoria tore them apart on cross. Did you ever accompany the defendant to these visits? No. So you don't know what happened once the door closed? No, but did you review your friend's financial records? Of course not. So you don't know if she was stealing? She wouldn't, but you don't know for certain, do you? No. The defense tried to discredit the videos. Brought in a tech expert who testified they could have been edited. Victoria's expert demolished him. Showed how the metadata proved the videos were continuous, unedited recordings. They tried to suggest Grandma was confused when she wrote her letter. The prosecution brought in a handwriting expert who compared the letter to other documents Grandma had written. The handwriting is consistent. The syntax and vocabulary match her other correspondence. This was written by a lucid individual. By the end of week 4, the defense was out of ammunition. Closing arguments took an entire day. The defense attorney painted my aunt as a concerned daughter trying to help her aging mother. He called the videos cherry-picked moments taken out of context. He suggested I had manipulated Grandma into changing the will. Then Victoria stood for the prosecution's closing. She didn't yell. Didn't need to. She simply walked the jury through everything again. The forged checks, the unauthorized medications, the conversations about accelerating the decline, the letter from a woman who knew exactly what was happening to her. The defense wants you to believe this was a misunderstanding, Victoria said. That Diane was just a daughter trying to help. But the evidence tells a different story. This was calculated, systematic, cruel. She paused, letting that sink in. The defendant didn't just steal her mother's money. She stole her dignity, her clarity, her final years. She turned her mother's own mind against her, made her doubt her own sanity, all so she could drain bank accounts and seize control. Victoria gestured to the empty witness stand. Mrs. Harrison can't be here to tell you what happened, but she left you her voice. On those videos. In that letter. In the medical records that show the pattern of abuse. She turned to the jury. Don't let her death be for nothing. Don't let her daughter get away with this because she's good at pretending to cry. Look at the evidence. Look at what she did. And hold her accountable. The jury deliberated for 2 days. 2 days of sitting in the courthouse hallway, drinking bad coffee, jumping every time the door opened. Finally, the call came. They had a verdict. We filed back into the courtroom. My aunt was brought in, looking exhausted and terrified. The jury foreman stood. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. My aunt collapsed. Her husband started crying. On the counts of elder abuse, fraud, and forgery, we find the defendant guilty. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was hearing. Guilty. On everything. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks out. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Reporters swarmed, but I didn't stop. Just got in Becca's car and let her drive me away. We didn't talk. She just drove to the beach and parked. I got out and walked to the water's edge. For the first time in months, I cried. Huge, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. Not from sadness. Not from relief. From exhaustion. From the weight of carrying this alone for so long. Becca found me an hour later, sitting in the sand. You did it, she said quietly. You got her. Grandma got her? I corrected. I just finished what she started. Sentencing day arrived cold and gray. The courtroom was less crowded this time. Just family, lawyers, and a handful of reporters. The judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement before sentencing. I stood. Your Honor, I don't want to talk about what my aunt did. Everyone knows by now. What I want to talk about is what my grandmother did. I pulled out Grandma's letter, the one from the will reading. She wrote this, knowing she was dying, knowing her own daughter had betrayed her. And even then, even after everything, she didn't want revenge. She wanted justice, and she wanted me to have a choice. I looked at my aunt, who sat with her head down. My grandmother taught me that family isn't just blood. It's showing up. It's being there when things are hard and staying when it would be easier to leave. My aunt never learned that lesson, but I did. I folded the letter carefully. I hope the sentence reflects not just what my aunt tried to do, but what my grandmother overcame, the strength it took to set this in motion while her own mind was being stolen from her. That deserves to be honored. I sat down. The judge was quiet for a moment. Then he began. I've presided over many cases in my career. This one will stay with me. The cruelty displayed here, the calculated nature of the abuse is extraordinary. He looked at my aunt. You took advantage of the one person who should have been able to trust you completely. You stole her money, her dignity, and very nearly her life. You showed no remorse, no empathy, no recognition of the harm you caused. My aunt started to speak. The judge held up his hand. I've heard enough. On the count of attempted murder, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison. On the counts of elder abuse, fraud, and forgery, I sentence you to an additional 10 years to run consecutively. 25 years total. My aunt would be 73 when she got out. Her husband received 12 years as an accomplice. They were led away separately. My aunt didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, broken. Outside the courthouse, reporters wanted statements. Victoria handled it. I just stood beside her numb. Justice was served today, Victoria said, not just for Mrs. Harrison, but for all elderly victims of abuse who can't speak for themselves. That night, I sat in my apartment alone. The inheritance had been released. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to quit my night shifts, go back to school, buy a house. But all I could think about was Grandma, how she'd planned all this, how she'd protected me even when she couldn't protect herself. I opened my laptop and started going through her estate documents Mr. Patterson had sent. There were accounts I didn't know about, investments, a safety deposit box she'd kept for 40 years, and a letter addressed to me, different from the one about my aunt. This one was older, written before the dementia had started. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've survived what I knew was coming. I've known for years that your aunt was trouble. The signs were always there. The selfishness, the entitlement, the way she looked at me sometimes, calculating what I was worth. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the ugliness that followed, but I knew you were strong enough to handle it. The money is yours now. Use it wisely. Use it to build the life you deserve. Don't let guilt or grief make you small. Remember, I chose you. Not because you needed the money, but because you earned it. Every Sunday, every doctor's appointment, every time you showed up when showing up was hard. That's worth more than any inheritance. Love, Grandma. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and called Becca. Hey, she answered. How are you holding up? I'm good. Actually, I'm better than good. Yeah? Yeah. I'm thinking about buying a house. Want to help me look? She laughed. Absolutely. Where are you thinking? I looked at Grandma's letter again. Somewhere with a big backyard. So I can plant a garden. Grandma always wanted me to have a garden. Then that's what we'll find. I hung up and opened my laptop to real estate listings. For the first time in years, I felt light, like I could breathe again. Grandma had given me more than money. She'd given me permission to live fully, to not carry the weight of her death or my aunt's crimes, to just be free. And that's exactly what I planned to do. 6 months later, I stood in my new backyard, hands in the dirt, planting roses. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, big windows, and a yard that caught the morning sun. I'd quit the night shifts, started a program to become a nurse practitioner, began volunteering at an elder care advocacy group. Every Sunday, I visited Grandma's grave, brought fresh flowers and told her about my week. It felt right, like those Sunday visits had come full circle. I never spoke to my aunt again, didn't visit her in prison, didn't respond to her letters. My cousins eventually reached out. Some apologized. Most just wanted to know if I'd help them financially now that I had money. I kept my distance from all of them, built a new family instead. Friends who showed up, colleagues who cared, people who understood that family is what you make it. On the 1-year anniversary of Grandma's death, I hosted a small gathering. Becca and her girlfriend came, my friend from the hospital, the woman from the jury who'd reminded me of Grandma. We'd become friends after the trial ended. We sat in my garden and shared stories about the people we'd lost, the ones who'd shaped us. Your grandmother would be proud, the former juror said. Her name was Patricia. You think so? I know so. You honored her memory by fighting for justice. But more than that, you honored it by living, by not letting bitterness destroy you. I looked around at the people gathered in my garden, people who showed up, who cared. She taught me that, I said. In the end, that's what she wanted me to learn, that showing up matters more than anything else. Patricia raised her glass. To showing up, we echoed. As the sun set over my garden, painting everything gold, I felt Grandma's presence. Not sad or haunting, just there, the way she'd always been, watching over me, proud of what I'd become, and finally at rest. My aunt told the family I brainwashed Grandpa out of his $2.2 million fortune until his nurse testified I was the only one who visited in 5 years. The accusations started the day after the will reading. My phone exploded with texts from cousins I hadn't heard from since high school. Uncle Pete called me a manipulative snake. Aunt Diane posted on Facebook about elder abuse and tagged half the family. My mom, caught between her brother and her daughter, kept saying we needed to talk this out like adults. But here's what they didn't know. For 5 years, I visited Grandpa every single Tuesday and Thursday at the nursing home. I'd bring his favorite butter cookies from the Polish bakery across town. We'd watch Jeopardy and he'd yell answers at the screen, getting maybe 30% right but feeling like a genius. When his roommate died, I sat with him through the night because he was terrified of being alone. When he got pneumonia, I was the one holding his hand at 3 a.m. while he struggled to breathe. The rest of the family? They had excuses. Always excuses. Aunt Diane lived 20 minutes away but was too busy with her book club and yoga classes. Uncle Pete claimed work kept him tied up, though his Facebook showed plenty of golf outings. My cousins were pursuing their dreams in other cities, as if Grandpa's loneliness should wait for their convenience. They sent cards on his birthday, called on Christmas maybe. That was their version of family devotion. Grandpa wasn't senile. His mind was sharp until the very end. He knew exactly who showed up and who didn't. He'd mention it sometimes, quietly, like he didn't want to burden me with his hurt. Your aunt says she'll visit next week, he'd say. Next week never came. After the first year, he stopped believing their promises. After the second, he stopped mentioning them at all. When he got sick last fall, I moved into the nursing home's family suite for 2 weeks. I bathed him when he was too weak to do it himself. I changed his sheets when he had accidents. I read him the newspaper every morning because his eyes had gotten too bad. The nurses knew me by name. They brought me coffee and thanked me for being there. The day before he died, Grandpa asked his lawyer to visit. He changed his will, leaving me everything except $50,000 split among the rest of the family. They can have enough for a nice vacation, he said, since they always seem too busy for anything else. The lawyer witnessed it. 2 nurses witnessed it. Grandpa was completely lucid, cracking jokes about finally getting the last word. At the will reading, you could hear a pin drop when the lawyer read the amount. Then came the explosion. Aunt Diane screamed that I'd poisoned Grandpa's mind. Uncle Pete threatened to sue. My cousins created a group chat called Justice for Grandpa and started planning their legal strategy. They hired a lawyer who specialized in contesting wills. They claimed undue influence, diminished capacity, coercion. The hearing was set for next month. My family stopped speaking to me entirely. My mom tried to play mediator, but eventually chose her brother's side. Family is family, she said, as if I'd forgotten that during those 5 years of Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yesterday, I got a call from Grandpa's primary nurse, the one who'd been with him for the entire 5 years. She'd received a subpoena to testify. I'm going to tell them the truth, she said, about who was there and who wasn't. About the Valentine's Day your aunt promised to visit and didn't show. About the birthday your uncle forgot completely. About all of it. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. There's something else you should know. Something I found in your grandfather's medical files from his last month. Something that changes everything about this case. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below. What did you find? I managed to ask, my hands shaking so badly I had to sit down. Nurse Patricia, I'd known her name for years, had brought her homemade cookies every Christmas, took a deep breath on the other end of the line. Your grandfather kept a journal. The social worker had been encouraging him to write down his thoughts as a way to process his feelings about aging and mortality. But it became something else entirely. What do you mean? He documented everything. Every visit, every phone call, every broken promise. He wrote down the dates, the times, what was said. He kept track of every birthday card that came late or not at all. Every Christmas call that lasted less than 5 minutes. And he wrote about you. About how you were the only one who showed up. My throat tightened. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? Because we only found it last week when we were clearing out his belongings from storage. Your aunt actually requested his personal effects be sent to her. She wanted to go through them before you could, claimed she was looking for family heirlooms. Patricia's voice dropped lower. But the journal was still in our medical records room. He'd asked us to keep it there, said it was important documentation. He told me specifically about 2 months before he passed, that if anyone ever questioned his decisions, this journal would tell the truth. I felt my heart pounding. Can I see it? I've already sent copies to your lawyer and to the judge handling the case, but I wanted you to know what's in it before the hearing. Some of it is going to be hard to read. That was an understatement. The journal arrived at my apartment 2 days later in a manila envelope marked confidential. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold as I read. Grandpa's handwriting was shaky but legible, deteriorating slightly over the months, but always clear enough to understand. The first entry was from 5 years ago, right after he'd moved into the nursing home. June 3rd, first day in this place. Diane promised she'd visit tomorrow to help me settle in. Pete said he'd come by this weekend with the grandkids. We'll see. June 4th, Diane didn't come. Said something came up. June 8th, Pete didn't show. Called to say the kids had soccer. June 10th, my granddaughter came today, brought me cookies from that Polish bakery I love, the one on Milwaukee Avenue. I didn't even know she remembered. We watched Jeopardy. She didn't seem to mind that I got most of the answers wrong. She just laughed and said I was giving Alex Trebek a run for his money. It was the first time I've laughed since moving here. I had to stop reading. My vision was blurring. The entries continued, month after month. Grandpa documented every visit I made, every detail. The time I brought him a heated blanket because he said his room was always cold. The afternoon I spent rearranging his furniture because he couldn't see the TV properly from his bed. The day I sat with him for 6 hours during a snowstorm because his roommate's family couldn't make it and he didn't want the man to be alone. And he documented every absence from everyone else. July 15th, my birthday. I'm 81 today. Diane called at 11 p.m., said she forgot, and hoped I had a good day. Pete sent a card that arrived 3 days late. My granddaughter took the day off work and brought a small cake. We ate it together and she told me stories about her job. She made me feel like I mattered. October 3rd. Diane was supposed to visit today. She's rescheduled 4 times now. I don't think she's coming. October 4th. She didn't come. November 28th. Thanksgiving. The nursing home had a family dinner. Diane and Pete both said they were too busy with their own celebrations. My granddaughter came and brought homemade stuffing because she knows it's my favorite. She stayed for 4 hours. I'm grateful, but it also makes me sad. She shouldn't have to spend her holiday with an old man in a nursing home. She should be with people her own age, but she chose to be here. That means something. The entries went on and on. Each one was like a knife to the chest. Not because of what he wrote about me. That filled me with a bittersweet warmth, but because of what he wrote about everyone else. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Diane promised last week she'd come today. She said she felt bad about missing so many visits and wanted to make it up to me. She didn't show, didn't even call. March 19th, Pete's birthday. I called to wish him happy birthday. He seemed surprised to hear from me. The call lasted 2 minutes. April 7th. My granddaughter brought me books from the library today. She knows I can't see well enough to read anymore, so she's been reading to me. Today we started a mystery novel. She does different voices for all the characters. It makes me laugh. There were pages and pages documenting the same pattern. My aunt's broken promises, my uncle's increasing distance, my cousin's complete absence, and my consistent presence, week after week, year after year. Then came the entries from his last few months. These were different, more reflective. September 12th. I've been thinking about my will. I know what people will say when I'm gone. They'll say my granddaughter manipulated me, that she took advantage of an old man, but that's not what happened. She's the only one who's been here. The only one who's treated me like I still matter. The others, they've already written me off. I'm just waiting to die in their minds. But not to her. To her, I'm still grandpa. Still someone worth visiting. September 30th. I talked to my lawyer today. I'm changing my will. Diane and Pete will be angry. They've always expected an inheritance. But why should they get rewarded for neglect? Why should they profit from my death when they couldn't be bothered to be there during my life? October 15th, I got pneumonia. Spent 3 nights in the hospital. My granddaughter slept in a chair next to my bed the entire time. She took time off work. She held my hand when I was scared. The nurses all know her by name. They treat her with respect because they see how much she cares. Meanwhile, my own children called once to check in. Once. October 23rd. I'm back at the nursing home. Weaker now. I can feel myself failing, but I'm at peace with my decision. My granddaughter deserves everything. She's earned it. Not through manipulation, but through love. Real love. The kind that shows up. The final entry was dated 2 days before he died. November 8th. I asked my lawyer to come today. Made it official. Changed the will. My granddaughter gets everything except $50,000 to split among the others. Let them have their vacation money since they always seem too busy for anything else. The lawyer asked if I was sure. I've never been more sure of anything. This isn't about money. It's about recognizing the truth. She was here. They weren't. That's all that matters. If they contest this, I want them to know. I was completely clear-headed when I made this decision. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I'd do it again. I closed the journal and sat in silence for a long time. This wasn't just documentation. This was evidence. Irrefutable evidence that Grandpa had been mentally sound, that his decision had been thought out over months, that there had been no manipulation or coercion. Just facts, just the truth. I called my lawyer immediately. Did you get the journal? I asked. I did, and so did opposing counsel. I suspect they're panicking right about now. What happens next? Well, they can still proceed with the hearing, but this journal destroys their entire case. They claimed your grandfather was coerced or mentally incompetent. This proves he was neither. He documented his own reasoning over a 5-year period. No judge is going to overturn a will with this kind of evidence. So we won? We won. But I'd recommend still going to the hearing. Let the judge read the entries aloud. Let your family hear them in public. They need to face what they've done. The hearing was scheduled for November 15th. I arrived early, dressed in the black suit I'd worn to Grandpa's funeral. My lawyer met me outside the courthouse. They're going to try to settle, she said. Probably offer you more of the inheritance if you'll just drop the case and avoid the public hearing. No deal, I said. Grandpa wanted the truth to come out. That's what's going to happen. Inside the courtroom, my family sat on the opposite side. Aunt Diane wore an expensive black dress and dark sunglasses, playing the grieving daughter. Uncle Pete looked uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. My cousins, there were 5 of them, looked annoyed, like they had better places to be. My mom sat separate from everyone, her face pale. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Please be seated, Judge Reynolds said. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I've reviewed the materials submitted by both parties. This is a case to contest the will of Mr. Anthony Kowalski, deceased, on the grounds of undue influence and diminished mental capacity. My aunt's lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, stood up. Your Honor, my clients believe that Ms. Kowalski manipulated her grandfather during a vulnerable time in his life. I've read your brief, counselor, the judge interrupted. I've also read the deceased's journal, which was submitted as evidence. Before we proceed, I want to address that directly. She put on her reading glasses and picked up the journal. The court has reviewed 163 dated entries spanning 5 years. Mr. Kowalski documented every visit he received, every phone call, every interaction with family members. He also documented his thought process regarding his will change extensively. She looked at my aunt's lawyer. Your clients claim Mr. Kowalski lacked mental capacity, yet his journal entries are clear, detailed, and demonstrate consistent reasoning over an extended period. He documented dates, times, and events with remarkable accuracy. My aunt's lawyer shuffled his papers. Your Honor, we believe the defendant may have influenced the contents of that journal. Are you suggesting she forged 163 entries in her grandfather's handwriting? The judge's voice was ice. Or that she somehow coerced him to write specific things over a 5-year period without any of the staff at the nursing home noticing? No, Your Honor, but I also have testimony from the nursing home staff. She picked up another document. 3 nurses, 2 social workers, and the facility director all confirmed that Ms. Kowalski visited regularly, that she was the primary family contact, and that Mr. Kowalski was mentally competent until his final day. They also confirmed that the other family members rarely visited. The judge looked directly at my aunt. Mrs. Thompson, according to the visitor logs and staff statements, you visited your father 4 times in 5 years. Is that correct? My aunt's face flushed. I was dealing with my own health issues. That's not what I asked. Did you visit 4 times in 5 years? The logs might not show every visit. They're electronic logs. They track every person who signs in. The judge's voice was sharp. 4 visits. The last one was 8 months before your father died. Meanwhile, your niece visited 520 times over the same period. That's an average of twice a week for 5 years straight. The courtroom was silent. I could feel my aunt's fury radiating from across the room. The judge continued. Mr. Fletcher, you visited 3 times in 5 years. The last visit was on your father's 85th birthday, where you stayed for approximately 20 minutes before leaving for a golf tournament. My uncle's face went pale. I don't recall. It's in your father's journal. He wrote, Pete came for my birthday, left after 20 minutes, said he had a tea time he couldn't miss. At least he came, I suppose. That's something. The judge read the entry with devastating precision. My uncle looked like he wanted to disappear. As for the grandchildren, she gestured to my cousins, the records show a combined total of 6 visits from all 5 of you over 5 years. 3 of those were for Christmas. 1 was for your grandfather's 84th birthday. The other 2 were when you needed him to co-sign loans. My cousin Trevor, oldest son of Uncle Pete, stood up angrily. This is ridiculous. We had our own lives, our own families. Sit down, the judge said coldly. Your grandfather also had a life. He was a widower living in a nursing home and he needed his family. You all made choices about where to invest your time and energy. He simply made a choice about where to invest his money. She closed the journal. I'm going to read a few more entries because I think this family needs to hear them. Mr. Kowalski wrote these in his final month. The judge began reading, and with each entry, I watched my family members sink lower in their seats. October 28th. I haven't heard from Trevor in 6 months. I called him today. He said he'd call back. He didn't. October 30th. Diane promised she'd come visit this week. She's promised that 23 times now over the past 5 years. I've stopped believing her. November 1st. I told Pete I was scared about dying. He said everyone feels that way and changed the subject. My granddaughter, when I told her the same thing, held my hand and talked with me about it for 2 hours. We talked about my wife, about my life, about what I hoped came next. She listened. Really listened. That's all I wanted. My aunt was crying now, mascara running down her face. But I felt no sympathy. These were tears of embarrassment, not remorse. The judge set down the journal. I want to be very clear. Mr. Kowalski's will is not being overturned. He was of sound mind, his wishes were clear, and he documented his reasoning extensively. This case is dismissed. My aunt's lawyer started to speak. Your Honor, if we could just— This case is dismissed, the judge repeated firmly. And I'm awarding costs to the defendant. Your clients will pay Ms. Kowalski's legal fees for having to defend against this baseless challenge. She looked at my family one final time. Mr. Kowalski left you each approximately $8,300 from the $50,000 he set aside. That's more than you deserved, based on your actions. He could have left you nothing. He chose to leave you something, and you chose to challenge his will, putting his granddaughter through months of stress during her grief. You should be ashamed. The gavel came down. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse with my lawyer, barely processing what had happened. We'd won. Completely. The will stood. The inheritance was mine. And my family had been publicly called out for their neglect. I need a drink, my lawyer said. That was brutal. That was necessary, I replied. As we stood on the courthouse steps, I saw my mother approaching. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The rest of the family had already left. Probably couldn't get out of there fast enough. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I don't think there's anything to say. Please, just 5 minutes. I nodded to my lawyer, who walked a discreet distance away. I'm sorry, my mom said, and she actually looked like she meant it. I should have supported you from the beginning. I knew you were there for your grandpa. I knew Diane and Pete weren't. But I thought if I stayed neutral, I could keep the family together. How'd that work out? She flinched. Not well. Your aunt isn't speaking to me now. Says I should have supported her more aggressively. Your uncle called me a coward. And they're both furious about the legal fees they have to pay. That's not my problem. I know. She looked at her hands. I made a choice. I chose wrong. I chose them over you, even though you were the one who did everything right. I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay angry. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, to cut her out like I'd cut out the rest of the family. But she was my mom. And unlike the others, she at least seemed to understand what she'd done wrong. I need time, I finally said. I can't just forgive and forget. You hurt me. You took their side when you knew the truth. I understand. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you, for standing up to them, for standing up for yourself, and for being there for your grandpa all those years. That took strength. It didn't feel like strength. It just felt like the right thing to do. That's what makes it strength, she said softly. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Your grandpa gave it to me about a year before he died. He made me promise to give it to you after he passed, but only if there was conflict in the family. He said you'd need it. I took the envelope. It had my name on it in Grandpa's handwriting. I'll give you space, my mom said. But when you're ready to talk, I'll be here. That's a promise I intend to keep. She walked away, leaving me standing there with the envelope. I didn't open it until I got home. Inside was a letter, dated almost exactly a year before Grandpa died. My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and my family is acting exactly as I expected them to. I'm sorry you have to deal with their anger and greed. I wish I could be there to defend you, but in a way, I suppose this letter is doing that. I want you to know something important. When I changed my will, It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision made in anger. It was a carefully considered choice based on years of observation. You showed up, you cared. You treated me like I still mattered, even when I was old and sick and scared. Your Aunt Diane is my daughter and I love her, but she's also someone who only shows up when it's convenient or beneficial. That's who she's always been. Even when she was young, she'd only call when she needed money or a favor. I accepted it then, but I don't have to reward it now. Your Uncle Pete is my son, and I love him too. But he spent his whole life prioritizing everything else over family. His work, his hobbies, his friends. Family was always last on his list. I used to think he'd change as he got older, realize what mattered. He never did. And your cousins, well, they're products of their parents. They learned that family is something you take from, not something you give to. But you're different. You didn't visit because you expected something in return. You visited because you love me. Real love, not the obligatory kind. And I want you to know how much that meant. The money I'm leaving you isn't a reward. You didn't earn it through your visits. You earned it through your character. And I trust you to use it wisely, to build a good life, to maybe help others the way you helped me. Don't let them make you feel guilty. Don't let them convince you that you're greedy or manipulative. You're neither. You're kind and loyal and decent. Those qualities are rare. Treasure them. I'm proud of you. I'm proud to have known you. And I'm at peace knowing that my money will go to someone who actually deserves it. Love always, Grandpa. I read the letter 3 times, crying through all of them. Then I carefully folded it and placed it in the box where I kept all the cards and letters Grandpa had given me over the years. The next week, I received a call from my aunt's lawyer. They wanted to discuss an arrangement. My clients are prepared to drop any further challenges to the will, he said smoothly. In exchange, they'd like you to consider a voluntary redistribution of the inheritance. They feel that a 50-50 split would be fair and would honor your grandfather's memory of family unity. I laughed. Actually laughed. You're kidding, right? My clients are trying to reach a reasonable compromise. Here's my compromise. They can have the $50,000 Grandpa already gave them, minus the legal fees they owe me. That's what the judge ordered. That's what they're getting. Tell them if they contact me again, I'll file a harassment complaint. I hung up. They tried twice more. Once through my uncle directly, who called and left a rambling voicemail about family forgiveness and Christian values. Once through my cousin Trevor, who sent a long email explaining how they'd all been misunderstood and how Grandpa would have wanted us to be united in his memory. I blocked their numbers, deleted the emails. They weren't going to guilt me into giving up what Grandpa had wanted me to have. The inheritance cleared 3 weeks later. $15 million minus legal fees and taxes. Still a staggering amount. I didn't blow it on anything extravagant. I didn't take a vacation or buy a sports car or do any of the things people probably expected. Instead, I paid off my student loan, put a down payment on a small house, set up a trust fund for my future kids' education, and donated $100,000 to the nursing home where Grandpa had lived, specifically for their activities program. We'd like to name the recreation room after him, the director said when I made the donation. If that's okay with you, he'd like that. He loved the recreation room. That's where we watched Jeopardy! They put up a plaque, the Anthony Kowalski Recreation Room, in memory of a beloved resident. I attended the dedication ceremony. The nursing home staff was there. Several residents who'd known Grandpa came. Nurse Patricia gave a speech about what a kind man he'd been, how he'd always had a joke ready, how he'd been unfailingly polite even on his worst days. My family was not invited. 6 months after the will was settled, I ran into my cousin Natalie at a grocery store. She was my age, had been someone I'd been close to as a kid. We'd drifted apart in high school, then completely lost touch. She saw me and immediately looked uncomfortable. I thought she'd turn and walk away, but instead she approached. "Hey," she said awkwardly. "Hey." We stood there in the produce section, both of us holding baskets, not sure what to say. "I'm sorry," she finally said, "about everything. The lawsuit, the things my parents said, all of it. It was wrong." I was surprised. "You're the first person from the family to actually apologize." "I know, and I should have done it sooner. I should have done it at the hearing, but I was scared. My parents were so angry and I didn't want to go against them." "So what changed?" She set down her basket. "I had a baby, 3 months ago, a little girl. And when I was in the hospital holding her, I started thinking about what kind of person I want her to grow up to be. And I realized I don't want her to be like my parents. I don't want her to think family is something you ignore until there's money involved." "Congratulations on the baby," I said, and meant it. "Thanks." I named her Ruth after Grandma. I wish I'd known Grandpa better before he died. I wish I'd visited more. But I was caught up in my own life, and by the time I thought about it, it felt too awkward, like too much time had passed. He would have loved to meet her. I know, and that's my fault. My mom keeps saying you stole our inheritance, but you didn't. We just never earned it. You did. You showed up. We didn't. We exchanged phone numbers. She wanted to stay in touch, wanted her daughter to know at least one decent person from the family. I wasn't sure if I'd actually call her, but I appreciated the gesture. A year after Grandpa's death, I visited his grave. It was a cold Tuesday in November, almost the anniversary of his passing. I brought flowers and a package of butter cookies from the Polish bakery. "Hey, Grandpa," I said, sitting down on the grass next to his headstone. "I wanted to update you on everything." I told him about the house I'd bought, about the nursing home donation, about the lawsuit and how the judge had read his journal entries aloud. I told him how his words had shut down every argument my aunt and uncle had tried to make. "You'd be happy to know Aunt Diane and Uncle Pete aren't speaking to each other anymore," I said. "Apparently they got in a huge fight about the legal fees. Each one thought the other should pay more. Their lawyer ended up having to split it between them, and neither one is happy about it." I told him about running into Natalie, about her baby. "She seems different now, more aware of what matters. Maybe having a kid does that to people." I told him about my mom, how we'd started talking again, slowly, carefully. We weren't back to where we'd been before, but we were working on it. I'm using the money wisely, I promised. Just like you asked, not wasting it, not flaunting it, just building a good life, a stable life, the kind of life you would have wanted for me. I sat there for a while longer, just feeling close to him. The wind rustled the leaves on the nearby trees. A few other people were visiting graves across the cemetery, but it was mostly quiet. I miss you, I finally said. I miss our Tuesday and Thursday visits. I miss watching Jeopardy with you. I miss bringing you cookies and hearing you complain about the nursing home food. I miss all of it. I placed the butter cookies by his headstone, knowing they'd probably get eaten by squirrels or birds. But it felt right. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for leaving me something more valuable than money. You left me the validation that what I did mattered, that showing up matters, that love is measured in time, not words. I stood up, brushed the grass off my jeans. I'll be back next Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that, just like always. As I walked back to my car, I felt a sense of peace. The lawsuit was over. The inheritance was settled. My family had shown their true colors, and I'd stood my ground. Grandpa's final wishes had been honored. 2 years later, I met someone. His name was David, and he worked as a physical therapist. We met at a coffee shop when we both reached for the last blueberry muffin. He insisted I take it. I insisted he take it. We ended up splitting it and talking for 3 hours. On our third date, I told him about Grandpa, about the inheritance, about the lawsuit. I wanted him to know the whole story before things got serious. My family thinks I'm a greedy manipulator who conned an old man out of his money, I said. If that's going to be a problem, is that what happened? He asked. No, I visited him twice a week for 5 years. I was there for him when no one else was. He left me his money because I actually cared about him. Then that's all I need to know. Your family's wrong. And honestly, the fact that you showed up for your grandpa like that says everything I need to know about your character. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, just close friends and a few relatives. My mom came. Natalie came with her now toddler daughter. My aunt, uncle, and other cousins were not invited. Aunt Diane sent a card anyway. It said, "Congratulations on your wedding. We hope you'll reconsider your stance on the inheritance. Family should stick together." I threw the card away without responding. On our honeymoon, David and I visited Poland, the country where Grandpa's parents had immigrated from. We went to the small village where his family had originated, saw the church where his parents had been married before coming to America. We brought back photos and a small folk art piece to hang in our home. I wish he could have seen this, I said. He talked about Poland sometimes, about wanting to visit his family's homeland. He'd be happy you're doing it for him, David said. When we returned home, I was pregnant. We found out a week after getting back. It's a boy, the doctor said at the ultrasound. David looked at me. Do you know what you want to name him? I did. Anthony, after my grandpa. Our son was born the following spring, Anthony David. He had dark hair and bright eyes and the most perfect tiny hands. I took him to visit Grandpa's grave when he was 3 weeks old. Hey, Grandpa, I said, holding the baby close. I want you to meet someone. This is Anthony, your great-grandson. I named him after you because you were one of the best men I ever knew. I hope he grows up to be like you, kind, sharp, and able to tell the truth even when it's hard. The baby made a small sound, like he was agreeing. I'm going to tell him about you, about our Tuesday and Thursday visits, about butter cookies and Jeopardy, about how you taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up. He's going to know his great-grandpa, even if they never got to meet. As I stood there with my son, I realized that Grandpa's legacy wasn't just the money. It was the lesson he'd taught me about what matters, about being present, about choosing people who choose you, about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. The money had changed my life in practical ways. Paid for a house, provided security, helped me build a stable foundation. But the real inheritance was the knowledge that I'd done right by someone I loved, that I'd shown up when it mattered, that I hadn't let him die alone and forgotten. 3 years after Grandpa's death, Uncle Pete had a stroke. It was serious. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks, then transferred to a rehab facility. My mom called to tell me. He's asking for you, she said. Why? I don't know. He just keeps saying your name. I didn't go right away. I needed time to think about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let him experience what Grandpa had experienced, watching the clock, hoping someone would show up, dealing with the disappointment when they didn't. But I wasn't him. I wasn't someone who could ignore family members when they were sick, even if they'd done it to others, even if they'd called me terrible names and tried to take away what Grandpa had left me. I went to visit on a Tuesday afternoon, full circle, I suppose. Uncle Pete looked smaller in the hospital bed, older. His face drooped slightly on one side from the stroke. He could talk, but his words were slurred. You came, he said when he saw me. I came. He was quiet for a moment, struggling to form words. I'm sorry. For what specifically? For all of it. The lawsuit. The things I said. For not being there for Dad. He took a shaky breath. I didn't realize until I ended up here how lonely it must have been for him. How much it must have hurt. I sat down in the chair next to his bed. The same kind of chair I'd sat in next to Grandpa's bed all those years. He wrote about you in his journal, I said. About how he'd call you and you'd say you'd call back but never would. About the birthday visit where you stayed 20 minutes before leaving for golf. He loved you. He just wished you'd loved him enough to show up. Uncle Pete's eyes filled with tears. I thought I had more time. I thought I'd visit more later when work slowed down, when the kids were older, when things were less busy. But things never got less busy. And then he was gone. Why did you support the lawsuit? If you felt so guilty, why try to take away what he left me? He looked ashamed. Diane convinced me. She said you'd manipulated him, that we were being cheated. And I think part of me wanted to believe that because it was easier than admitting the truth, that I'd failed my father. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Are you going to stay? He finally asked. Or are you just here to tell me I'm getting what I deserve? I'm going to stay for a little while. Not because you deserve it, but because this is who I am, someone who shows up. I visited Uncle Pete 3 more times during his recovery, not out of obligation or forgiveness, but because I refused to become what he and Aunt Diane had been. I refused to let their behavior change who I was, but I didn't forget. And I didn't pretend everything was fine. When he was released from rehab and asked if we could put everything behind us, I was honest with him. I'm glad you're recovering, but no, we can't just put it behind us. You tried to take away what Grandpa wanted me to have. You called me a manipulative snake. You made my grief harder by dragging me through a lawsuit. Those aren't things I can just forget. I said I was sorry. And I'm saying sorry isn't enough. You're sorry now because you had a health scare, and it made you realize some things. But where was that realization when Grandpa was alive and lonely? Where was it when you were posting on social media about family values while never visiting your father? He didn't have an answer for that. If you want to rebuild some kind of relationship with me, I said, it's going to take time and effort, real effort, not just words, but I'm not holding my breath. I left his house that day and felt no guilt. I'd done more than he deserved. The rest was up to him. Aunt Diane never apologized. She doubled down instead. She started a blog about elder abuse and grandchildren who manipulate for money. She didn't use my name directly, but anyone who knew the situation would know who she was talking about. I ignored it for 6 months. Then Natalie called me. My mom's gotten out of control, she said. The blog is getting attention. She's doing podcast interviews. She's positioned herself as some kind of advocate for elderly people, using Grandpa's story but twisting it to make you look like the villain. It's wrong. What do you think I should do about it? I think you should tell your side, publicly. The truth needs to get out there. I thought about it for a week. Part of me wanted to stay private, to keep our family drama within the family. But another part of me realized that Aunt Diane was profiting from lies. She was using Grandpa's memory to build a platform and make money from sponsored content on her blog. That I couldn't ignore. I wrote a detailed post on Medium titled, The Truth About Elder Abuse and Inheritance, A Granddaughter's Perspective. I didn't name my aunt directly, but I shared the timeline, the visitor logs, excerpts from Grandpa's journal, with his lawyer's permission, the judge's ruling, all of it. The post went viral. Within a week, it had over 2 million views and thousands of comments. People shared their own stories of being the only family member who showed up, of dealing with relatives who ignored aging parents until there was money on the line. A journalist reached out and asked to interview me. The article ran in a major newspaper with the headline, Inheritance Battle Reveals Uncomfortable Truth About Elder Care in America. Aunt Diane's blog suddenly looked very different in context. People started leaving comments on her posts, calling her out for the hypocrisy. Her sponsorships dried up. She shut down the blog 2 months later. She sent me one email after that. All it said was, I hope you're happy now. I didn't respond. But yes, I was happy. Not because I'd hurt her, but because the truth was out there. Grandpa's story was told correctly. His choice was validated publicly, not just in a courtroom. 5 years after Grandpa's death, my son Anthony started asking questions about his namesake. Tell me about great-grandpa, he'd say at bedtime. And I would. I'd tell him about butter cookies and Jeopardy. About a man who loved crossword puzzles and bad jokes. About someone who knew the difference between family who showed up and family who made excuses. Did everyone love him? Anthony asked one night. Not enough people showed him they did, I said honestly. Some people said they loved him but didn't act like it. Love is an action, not just a feeling. You have to show people you care. Like how you visit him at the cemetery? Exactly like that. Anthony thought about this. When I'm big, can I visit him with you? Of course. We'll bring cookies. Even though he can't eat them? Even though he can't eat them. It's about remembering him, honoring him, showing that he mattered. He mattered to you. He mattered to me very much. My son learned the lesson Grandpa had taught me, that showing up matters, that consistency matters, that real love is measured in presence, not promises. 10 years after the will reading, I got a call from my mom. She was crying. Diane had a heart attack, she said. She's in ICU. It doesn't look good. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, anger, pity, sadness. Aunt Diane had spent the last decade being bitter and hateful, and now she was dying. Part of me thought she was getting what she deserved. Part of me just felt sad for the waste of it all. Are you going to visit her? My mom asked. I don't know. She's asking for you and Pete. She wants to apologize. She's had 10 years to apologize. I know. But maybe she needs to do it now, for her own peace. I thought about it for 2 days. Then I drove to the hospital. Aunt Diane looked terrible. Gray-skinned, hooked up to machines, struggling to breathe. My mom was there, along with my cousins. The room felt heavy with years of family dysfunction. I'll give you privacy, my mom said, ushering the cousins out. I sat in the chair next to the bed. That damn chair again. You came, Aunt Diane rasped. I did. I'm dying. I know. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears were running down her face. I'm sorry for all of it. I was cruel to you. I was cruel to my father. I wasted so much time on stupid things. Book club, yoga, image, and I missed what mattered. Why did you do it? Why fight so hard for money from a man you couldn't be bothered to visit? Because I was ashamed. Because I knew I'd failed him. And admitting you'd been a better granddaughter than I'd been a daughter was too painful. So I made you the villain instead. I convinced myself you'd manipulated him because the alternative was accepting that I'd abandoned him. He loved you. He wrote about that in his journal too. He wished you'd come. He kept hoping year after year. I know. I read the court transcripts. I read everything. She coughed. A wet, rattling sound. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know it's too late for that. I just wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. and I'm sorry for the pain I caused you." I sat there looking at her, this woman who'd made my life hell for years, who'd tried to take away what Grandpa wanted me to have, who'd spread lies about me publicly, and all I felt was tired. "I accept your apology," I said. "Not because you earned it, but because I'm letting go of the anger. It's been weighing me down for too long." "Thank you," she whispered. I stayed with her for an hour. We didn't talk much. There wasn't really anything else to say. When I got up to leave, she grabbed my hand weakly. "Take care of Natalie's kids," she said. "They deserve better than the example I set." "I will." She died 2 days later. I attended the funeral, sent flowers, but I didn't speak. I'd said everything I needed to say. At the reception afterward, Uncle Pete pulled me aside. He'd recovered well from his stroke, though he walked with a slight limp now. "Diane left you something," he said. "Asked me to give it to you." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note that said, "I should have split my portion of Dad's inheritance with you. You earned it. This doesn't make up for what I did, but it's what I can give. Diane." I looked at the check for a long time. Then I donated it to an elder care advocacy organization in Grandpa's name. Now, 15 years after Grandpa's death, I have 3 children. Anthony is 12, his sister Julia is 8, his brother Thomas is 5. We visit Grandpa's grave as a family every few months. The kids bring drawings and flowers. They've heard all the stories. They know about the butter cookies and Jeopardy. They know about Tuesday and Thursday visits. They know about the lawsuit and the journal and why their great-grandpa left me his money. "Great-grandpa sounds cool," Julia said once. He was. He was very cool. I wish I could have met him. "Me too, sweetheart, me too." The inheritance money is mostly in trust funds for the kids now. College funds, investment accounts, a safety net for their futures. The house is paid off. We live comfortably, but not extravagantly. David and I both work. Me as a social worker now, specializing in elder care advocacy. Him still in physical therapy. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty about the inheritance, if I ever doubted whether I deserved it. I don't. Not anymore. Because I understand now what Grandpa was really leaving me. Yes, it was money, but more than that, it was validation. It was proof that showing up matters, that love is a verb, that real family is built through actions, not DNA. The rest of my family learned that lesson too late. Or maybe they never really learned it at all, but I did. And I'm teaching it to my children. When Anthony turned 13 last month, he asked if he could start volunteering at the local nursing home. "Why do you want to do that?" I asked. "Because great-grandpa was lonely, and I bet there are other people there who are lonely too. Maybe I could visit them, like you visited him." I cried. Right there in the kitchen, I just started crying. "That's a wonderful idea," I managed to say. So now, every Tuesday after school, I drive Anthony to the nursing home. He visits with a man named Walter who has no family left. They play cards and watch game shows and talk about baseball. Walter's face lights up when he sees Anthony coming. "You're a good kid," I told my son last week. "I'm just showing up," he said, "like you taught me." And that's Grandpa's real legacy. Not the $2.2 million, not the lawsuit or the drama or any of that. It's the lesson that showing up matters, that people need to be seen and valued. That family is something you build through presence and care. My aunt and uncle learned that lesson too late. They thought family was something you could take for granted, something that would always be there waiting when you finally decided to show up. They were wrong. And Grandpa made sure they knew it. His will wasn't about punishing them. It was about honoring the truth, about saying out loud what everyone knew but no one wanted to admit. I was there. They weren't. That mattered. It still matters. Every Tuesday when I drop Anthony off at the nursing home, I think about Grandpa. About those 5 years of visits. About butter cookies and Jeopardy and holding his hand at 3 a.m. when he was scared. I wouldn't trade those moments for anything. Not for all the money in the world. Because those moments were real. They were love in its truest form. And no one can take that away from me. Not my aunt with her blog. Not my uncle with his excuses. Not my cousins with their lawsuit. They can contest the will all they want. The judge already settled that. But they can't contest the truth. I was there. I showed up. I loved him when he needed it most. And he loved me back by making sure I'd be okay after he was gone. That's family. Real family. Everything else is just noise. My boyfriend said I was being dramatic about his female best friend, until I showed him the text where she said she's just waiting for us to break up. For 6 months, I'd been trying to explain that Veronica made me uncomfortable. The way she'd text him at 2 a.m. about nothing. How she'd touch his arm and call him by a nickname only she used. The Instagram stories she'd post from his apartment when I wasn't there. "You're being insecure," Liam would say. "We've been friends since high school." It's not like that. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Then my phone died during a work conference and I borrowed Liam's to call my mom. That's when I saw it. A notification from Veronica that made my stomach drop. "Day 187 of watching you waste your time. She's not gonna last." They never do. My hands shook as I opened their message thread. Months of conversations I'd never seen. Her complaining about me. Him defending me, but weakly. Her sending photos of herself in outfits. Asking his opinion. Him responding with heart emojis I'd thought were reserved for me. But the worst part was from 3 weeks ago. "Veronica, you know you're going to marry me eventually, right? We're inevitable." Liam, "Stop. I'm with her now." Veronica, "For now. But I'm patient. I've waited this long." He'd never told me about that message. Never mentioned that his best friend was openly declaring her intention to replace me. When Liam came home that evening, I handed him his phone with the messages open. "I can explain," he started. "Explain what?" I asked, surprisingly calm. "That your best friend thinks you two are endgame? That she's counting down the days until we break up?" His face went pale. "It's not like that. She's just going through a breakup. She's emotional." "This is from 6 months ago," I said. "Her breakup was last month." He had no response to that. I spent the next week at my sister's place thinking Liam would realize how toxic Veronica was. Instead, he sent me paragraphs about how I was overreacting, how I was trying to isolate him from his friends. Then Veronica posted a photo, her and Liam at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. Caption, "Some traditions are worth keeping." I blocked them both. 2 months later, I was rebuilding. New apartment, new routines, new confidence. I'd started seeing someone casual, nothing serious, just testing the waters again. That's when my sister called. "You need to see this," she said, her voice strained. She sent me a link to a wedding website, Liam and Veronica's wedding website. The date was set for 6 months out. Their love story section claimed they'd been secretly in love for years, but timing was never right until recently. I felt sick. Then I felt angry. Then I felt something else entirely. Because buried in their photo gallery was a picture that made everything click into place. Liam and Veronica at a restaurant, dated 8 months ago. 2 months before Liam and I even started dating. I zoomed in on the background. There was a ring box on the table. My sister's voice pulled me back. "There's more. Check your email. Someone sent you something." In my inbox was a message from an unknown sender. No name, just a subject line. "You deserved to know the truth." Attached were screenshots. Dozens of them. Messages between Liam and Veronica going back 2 years, planning how he'd date other girls to make her jealous, discussing their timeline for getting back together, referring to me and his other ex-girlfriends as placeholders. But the last screenshot was dated yesterday. Veronica to Liam. "I told you the revenge plan would work perfectly." She never suspected we staged that text for her to find. My phone buzzed. A new message from the unknown sender. "We need to talk. I'm ex-girlfriend number 3, and I think they did this to all of us." I stared at the message for a full minute before my fingers started working again. "Who is this?" I typed back. The response came immediately. "Coffee tomorrow? 10 a.m. at Riverside Cafe? I promise I'm not crazy, but we need to compare notes before their wedding happens." My sister was reading over my shoulder. "Don't go alone." "I won't," I said. But something in my chest had shifted from confusion to cold, calculated anger. I showed up 15 minutes early the next morning, my sister waiting in her car across the street as backup. The cafe was one of those hipster places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. I ordered a black coffee and claimed a corner table with a clear view of the door. At exactly 10, a woman walked in. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing business casual like she'd come straight from an office. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me. Some sort of recognition passed between us. "You must be the placeholder from last year," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. No handshake, no pleasantries. "I'm Kendra. I was the placeholder from 3 years ago." "How did you find me?" I asked. "I've been tracking them," she said simply, pulling out a tablet. "After what they did to me, I started keeping tabs. Every time Liam starts dating someone new, I document it. I have a whole file." She opened a folder on her screen. Inside were dozens of photos, screenshots, and documents organized by date. Why? The question came out harsher than I intended. Kendra's jaw tightened. "Because they destroyed my life, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy, that it really happened the way I remembered." She pulled up a timeline. Liam and Veronica dated in high school, broke up their freshman year of college, supposedly mutual, but they never really stopped. They'd date other people, but always keep each other as the backup plan. The best friend thing was a cover. I leaned forward. "So why the games? Why not just be together?" "Because Veronica has abandonment issues from her parents' divorce," Kendra said, "and Liam has a savior complex. They're addicted to the drama of breaking up and getting back together." But somewhere along the way, it turned into a sick competition. She scrolled through messages. They started making bets. Who could date someone longer before the other got jealous enough to sabotage it? Who could make their placeholder fall harder before the inevitable breakup? They keep score. My stomach turned. That's insane. That's not even the worst part. Kendra pulled up a spreadsheet. They document everything. How long each relationship lasts. How devastated each girl is when it ends. They've been doing this for 6 years. "You're number 7. 7? I whispered. "There's me. There's you. There are 5 others in between." She showed me a list of names, dates, and what she called emotional damage scores that Liam and Veronica had assigned to each breakup. I pushed back from the table, feeling sick. "How do you know all this?" "Because after Liam dumped me, I broke into Veronica's cloud storage," Kendra said flatly. "I'm a cybersecurity analyst. It's what I do. And before you judge me, understand that these 2 people convinced me I was mentally unstable. They gaslit me so thoroughly I spent 8 months in therapy thinking I was paranoid and possessive." She pulled up another file. "Then I found their shared journal. They write about us like we're characters in their personal soap opera. They rate our performances. They critique our reactions to their manipulations." My hands were shaking. "Show me." What I read made me want to throw up. Entry after entry, describing in cold detail how they'd planted seeds of doubt, staged conversations for me to overhear, and orchestrated that final text message I'd found. They'd even debated which wording would hurt the most. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Why not expose them months ago?" Kendra's eyes hardened. "Because I wanted to wait until they felt safe, until they thought they'd won. They're getting married in 6 months, right? They think all their placeholders are too broken or too embarrassed to cause trouble." She leaned across the table. "But I've been collecting evidence for 3 years. And I found 4 of the other women. We've been talking, comparing stories, building a case. A case for what? Fraud, for starters. Do you know how much money we collectively spent on therapy? On moving apartments to get away from them? On replacing items they accidentally damaged? I've calculated over $40,000 in damages across all 7 women." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You want to sue them. I want to destroy them," Kendra corrected. "The way they destroyed us." But legally, professionally, socially, I want everyone they know to see exactly what they are. She pulled up a group chat. The others are waiting to meet you. We need all 7 to make this work. Will you help us? I thought about the last 8 months, the sleepless nights, the panic attacks, the way I'd questioned my own instincts and sanity, the way Liam had made me feel like I was the problem. What's the plan? Kendra smiled. And it wasn't a nice smile. We crashed their wedding, but not the way you're thinking. The next meeting happened 3 days later in a private room at a law library. Kendra had rented it under her firm's account. When I walked in, 4 other women were already there. They all looked at me the way I probably looked at them. Recognition mixed with sympathy, mixed with anger. Okay, Kendra said, pulling up a presentation on the room's screen. Let's introduce ourselves properly. I'm Kendra, placeholder 3. I dated Liam for 8 months 2 years ago. A blonde woman with glasses spoke next. I'm Whitney, placeholder 1. I dated him for 6 months, 4 years ago. I was a sophomore in college. He was my first serious boyfriend. Placeholder 2, said a woman with a short pixie cut. Britt, 7 months, 3 years ago. I moved to a different state to get away from the harassment. Placeholder 4, said a quiet brunette. Deshawn, 4 months. He proposed to me, then ghosted me completely. I found out later it was because Veronica got jealous of the ring. Placeholder 5, said a woman with purple streaks in her hair. Tess, 9 months. Longest one before you. She nodded at me. They really committed to breaking me down. I swallowed hard. Placeholder 6, 8 months. I thought I was going crazy. We all did, Whitney said. That's their specialty. Kendra clicked the next slide. Here's what we know. Liam and Veronica have been running this pattern for 6 years. They've cost us collectively $42,000 in therapy, moving costs, property damage, and lost wages from jobs we quit due to stress. They've violated revenge porn laws in 3 states by sharing intimate photos of us in their private chats. And they've committed fraud by soliciting loans from some of us under false pretenses. She clicked again. But the real crime is emotional abuse. Systematic, calculated, documented emotional abuse. They've been recording us, taking notes on our vulnerabilities, using psychological manipulation techniques they research online. How do we prove all this? I asked. Kendra smiled. Because they documented everything themselves. Their shared cloud storage has years of evidence. Journals, spreadsheets, videos, photos. They were so confident no one would ever see it that they kept meticulous records. You still have access? Deshawn asked. I do, and I've been downloading everything. Backed up in 3 separate locations. Encrypted, time-stamped, verified. Britt leaned forward. So what's the plan? We have multiple objectives, Kendra said. 1, we want financial restitution. 2, we want public exposure so they can't do this to anyone else. 3, we want them to feel a fraction of what we felt. She pulled up a new slide showing a timeline. The wedding is in 5.5 months. Here's what we do. We let them think they won. We don't contact them. We don't leave reviews or make social media posts. We stay completely silent. Why? Tess asked. Because they're watching, Kendra said. Veronica still monitors our social media. Liam has burner accounts that friend our friends. They're waiting for us to act out so they can play the victim. So we go dark. We let them relax. She clicked to the next slide. Meanwhile, we build our case. We compile evidence. We contact a lawyer who specializes in emotional distress lawsuits. We document everything in a format that will hold up in court. And then? I asked. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, when they've sent out invitations and paid all their deposits, when their families and friends are all invested, we file a lawsuit. A detailed, specific, publicly filed lawsuit that names both of them and includes enough evidence in the filing that anyone who searches their names will find it. Whitney's eyes widened. Their employers will see it. Their wedding guests will see it, Britt added. The wedding vendors will see it, Deshawn said. Everyone will see it, Kendra confirmed. And the beauty is, it's all true, documented, provable. They can't claim we're crazy ex-girlfriends because there are 7 of us telling the same story. What about criminal charges? I asked. Harder to prove, Kendra admitted. But the civil suit will be devastating enough. Liam works in finance. A lawsuit alleging fraud and emotional abuse will destroy his career. Veronica's in HR. Her entire job is handling workplace misconduct. She'll be unhireable. Tess was nodding. And the wedding? Will probably get canceled, Kendra said. Once their families see the lawsuit, once their friends start asking questions, once the vendors realize they're hosting an event for people accused of systematic abuse. But we're not stopping there, Kendra continued. We're also creating a comprehensive document, a PDF file that details everything with screenshots, timelines, and testimonials from all of us. We're going to email it to every single wedding guest 2 days before the ceremony. The room went quiet. Is that legal? Whitney asked. Perfectly legal, Kendra said. It's the truth. We have proof. We're not making threats or spreading lies. We're informing people about who they're celebrating. I felt my hands curl into fists. Count me in. One by one, the others agreed. Good, Kendra said. Because we have a lot of work to do, and we need to be smart about this. No emotional outbursts. No drunk texts. No social media posts. We treat this like the legal case it is. She handed out folders. These are your assignment. Whitney, you're documenting financial damages. Britt, you're compiling the timeline. Deshawn, you're organizing the screenshots and messages. Tess, you're handling victim statements. And you, she looked at me, you're going to help me build the psychological profile showing their pattern of behavior. What about placeholder 7? I asked. Kendra's expression darkened. There isn't one. You were the last. After you, Liam and Veronica decided they'd proven their point and set their wedding date. You were the final game before they settled down. Lucky me, I said bitterly. Actually, yes, Kendra said. Because you're the one who can testify to their current state of mind. You can confirm they're still together, still planning the wedding, still acting like nothing happened. Your testimony is crucial. She stood up. Everyone understand their assignments? We meet again in 2 weeks. Same place, same time. Until then, complete radio silence about this. No texts about it, no emails, no social media. We keep this airtight. As we filed out, Whitney caught my arm. Hey, I know this is overwhelming, but I just want you to know you're not alone anymore. What they did to you, to all of us, it wasn't okay. And we're going to make sure they face consequences. I nodded, not trusting my voice. In the parking lot, my sister was waiting in her car, engine running. Well, she asked as I got in. We're going to destroy them, I said. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded and put the car in drive. The next 2 weeks were a blur of documents and memories I'd tried to forget. Every night after work, I'd sit at my kitchen table with my laptop, pulling up old text messages, emails, and photos, building a timeline of manipulation. I documented the time Liam accidentally liked an Instagram photo of Veronica in a bikini, then told me I was overreacting when I mentioned it. The time he canceled our anniversary dinner because Veronica was having a crisis, then posted photos the next day of them at a concert together. The time Veronica showed up at my apartment unannounced and let herself in with Liam's key, claiming she needed to grab something he'd left there. Every gaslighting conversation. Every time he'd made me feel jealous and possessive for having completely reasonable boundaries. Every time he defended Veronica while making me feel like the problem. I pulled bank statements showing the money I'd lent him for emergencies that he never repaid. I found emails where he'd promised to pay me back, then later claimed he didn't remember borrowing anything. I screenshot the dating app where we'd met, where his profile claimed he was looking for something serious and tired of games. The more I documented, the angrier I got. Not the hot, explosive anger of betrayal, but cold, calculated fury that sharpened my focus. I started sleeping better. Having a purpose, a plan, was therapeutic in a way months of actual therapy hadn't been. My sister noticed. You seem different, she said one night over takeout. I feel different, I admitted. I spent so long thinking something was wrong with me, wondering if I was too jealous, too insecure, too demanding. Now I know it was all part of their game, and that clarity is powerful. Just don't let revenge consume you, she warned. It's not revenge, I said. It's justice. There's a difference. The second meeting came quickly. All 7 of us reconvened in the law library, folders thick with evidence. Kendra started the meeting by pulling up a video on the screen. Before we share our findings, I want you all to see something. I hacked into the camera system at Veronica's apartment last week. My stomach dropped. Is that legal? Questionable, Kendra admitted. Which is why this footage will never see the inside of a courtroom. But I needed you all to see this to understand what we're dealing with. She pressed play. The video showed Liam and Veronica in her living room, laptop open between them. On the screen was Whitney's LinkedIn profile. She's still single, Veronica said, laughing. 3 years later and still no relationship status update. We really did a number on her. She was too easy, Liam replied. Believed everything I said. Remember when I told her I was allergic to her perfume and she threw out her entire collection? They both laughed. Veronica scrolled to another profile. Mine. This one lasted longer, she said. I thought we might actually have competition. Please, Liam scoffed. She was desperate for validation. Classic daddy issues. Once I figured that out, it was over. Veronica kissed him. You're terrible. You love it. I do. But I'm glad we're done with the games. 7 placeholders is enough. Time to settle down and be boring. Never boring, Liam said. We'll just find new games to play. Kendra paused the video. The room was completely silent. Whitney was crying quietly. Britt's hands were balled into fists. Deshawn looked like she might be sick. I'm sorry you had to see that, Kendra said. But I needed you to understand. They don't feel guilty. They're not conflicted. They're proud of what they did. They see us as entertainment, as accomplishments. They're sociopaths, Tess said flatly. Maybe, Kendra said. Or maybe they're just cruel people who found each other. Either way, they need to face consequences. She pulled up a new presentation. Let's review what we have. Whitney, you're up first. Whitney wiped her eyes and pulled out a spreadsheet. Total financial damages across all 7 of us. $43,200. That includes therapy bills, moving costs, property damage, unreturned loans, and lost wages from jobs we quit due to stress. She clicked through receipts and bank statements, each one backed up with documentation. I have signed affidavits from 3 therapists confirming they treated us for symptoms consistent with emotional abuse and gaslighting. I have rental agreements showing 4 of us moved to different addresses within months of the breakup. And I have loan agreements and text messages showing money that was borrowed and never repaid. Excellent work, Kendra said. Britt, timeline? Britt pulled up a massive flowchart. I've mapped every relationship chronologically with key events. The patterns are identical across all 7 relationships. Each one follows the same playbook. Love bombing in month 1. Introduction to Veronica in month 2. Gradual isolation from friends and family in months 3 and 4. Escalating triangulation with Veronica in months 5 through 7. Then either an abrupt breakup or a slow fade. She zoomed in. But here's where it gets interesting. Look at the gaps between relationships. Each breakup is followed by a 6-week period where Liam and Veronica publicly reunite. They post couple photos, change their relationship status, do everything to make sure the ex-girlfriend sees they're together. Then, exactly 6 weeks later, they quietly remove the relationship posts and Liam starts dating someone new. It's a victory lap, I said quietly. Exactly. They want us to see them together. They want us to feel like we were replaced. It's part of the game. Deshawn went next, presenting hundreds of screenshots organized by theme, manipulation tactics, gaslighting phrases, triangulation attempts, boundary violations. The consistency is damning, she said. They use the exact same lines on all of us. You're being insecure. She's just a friend. I can't believe you'd ask me to choose, word for word, across 7 relationships. Tess presented our victim statements, powerful testimonials from each woman describing the emotional toll. Several of us had been diagnosed with anxiety or depression following the relationships. 2 had lost jobs. 1 had attempted suicide. The room felt heavy with shared trauma. Finally, Kendra and I presented the psychological profile. We'd worked with a forensic psychologist who'd reviewed all our evidence and written a detailed analysis of Liam and Veronica's pattern of behavior. The diagnosis was clear: systematic emotional abuse with sociopathic tendencies, predatory relationship patterns, calculated manipulation, high likelihood of reoffending. This is enough to bury them, Kendra said. We have financial damages. We have pattern evidence. We have expert testimony. We have their own words documenting their actions. So what's next? I asked. Kendra pulled up a calendar. We have 4 months until the wedding. Here's the timeline. Month 1, we finalize all documentation and submit it to our lawyer. Month 2, we let the lawyer review everything and prepare the filing. Month 3, we do nothing. We wait. We let them think they're safe. And month 4, 2 weeks before the wedding, we file the lawsuit. 1 week before the wedding, we send the information packet to all wedding guests. And the day before the wedding, we hold a press conference. A press conference? Whitney said. Isn't that overkill? No, Kendra said, because this isn't just about us anymore. Think about how many other people they could do this to. How many more women could end up like us. We have a responsibility to expose them. She pulled up a mock press release. We're going to tell our story publicly. As a group, 7 women who independently discovered they'd been victimized by the same couple. It's newsworthy. Local media will cover it. And once it's public, it becomes searchable. Anyone who Googles their names will find our story. We'll be exposed too, Britt said. We will, Kendra agreed. But we'll be exposed as survivors, not victims. As women who fought back, who refused to stay silent. And we'll use fake names in the press conference if anyone wants, she added. But the lawsuit has to have our real names. That's the price of legal justice. I looked around at the 6 other women. We'd all been broken by the same 2 people. We'd all spent months thinking we were alone, that something was wrong with us. Now we were together. Now we were fighting back. I'm in, I said. My real name, everything. One by one, the others agreed. The next 3 months were the longest of my life. We worked in secret, communicating only through encrypted channels. Our lawyer, a woman named Isabel who specialized in interpersonal abuse cases, was methodical and brilliant. This is one of the most well-documented cases I've ever seen, she told us at our first meeting. Most abuse victims don't have this kind of evidence. You've built an airtight case. She walked us through the legal strategy. We'd file a civil lawsuit alleging intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, and conspiracy to commit emotional harm. We'd name both Liam and Veronica as defendants. We'd seek compensatory and punitive damages. The beauty of a civil suit is the lower burden of proof, Isabel explained. We don't need beyond reasonable doubt. We just need preponderance of evidence. And you have that in spades. While Isabel prepared the legal filing, Kendra and I worked on the public-facing document, a comprehensive PDF that told our story in clear, factual language. Screenshots, timelines, expert analysis, and personal testimonials. We hired a private investigator to verify information and dig deeper into Liam and Veronica's background. What he found was chilling. They'd been doing this even longer than we thought. Before the 7 of us, there were 3 other women in high school and early college, 10 victims total over 8 years. The investigator also found that Liam had been fired from a previous job for inappropriate relationships with subordinates. The company had paid a settlement to a former employee who'd filed a harassment complaint. Veronica had been named in 2 separate complaints at her company's HR department. Both were dismissed, but the allegations involved favoritism toward Liam and hostility toward women he dated who worked at the same company. They're not just doing this in their personal lives, Isabel said. They're doing it professionally, too. This is who they are. As the wedding date approached, we watched from afar as Liam and Veronica posted happy couple photos, wedding planning updates, and gushing comments about their love story. Veronica posted a photo of her dress with the caption, 7 years of friendship finally becoming forever. The number wasn't a coincidence. It was a taunt. They know we know, Tess said in one of our meetings. They're rubbing it in our faces. Let them, Kendra said. The higher they climb, the harder they'll fall. 2 weeks before the wedding, Isabel filed the lawsuit. It was a public record immediately. Within hours, we saw the first signs that it had been noticed. Liam's law firm put him on administrative leave. Veronica was called into a meeting with her company's legal team. Their wedding website suddenly went private. 1 week before the wedding, we sent the information packet to every guest on their list. The investigator had managed to get the full guest list from the venue. 250 people received a detailed PDF explaining exactly who they were about to celebrate. The responses came fast. Within 24 hours, over half the guests had canceled their RSVPs. Family members started calling Liam and Veronica, demanding explanations. Friends posted confused messages asking if the lawsuit was real. Veronica posted a statement on social media. We're victims of a coordinated attack by jealous ex-girlfriends who can't accept that we've moved on. Please don't believe their lies. But the evidence was too overwhelming. Screenshots of their own messages, their own words, expert testimony, 10 women telling the same story. The news started picking it up. Local reporters reached out to Isabel, who confirmed the lawsuit was real and that her clients were willing to go public. 3 days before the wedding, Liam posted that the ceremony was postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. The next day, Veronica posted a long rant about false accusations and trial by social media, but her comments were flooded with people pointing out the documented evidence. 2 days before the wedding, we held our press conference. All 7 of us sat at a table in a hotel conference room, facing cameras and reporters. Kendra spoke first, explaining how we'd found each other and what we'd discovered. Then each of us told our story, brief, factual, emotional. When it was my turn, I looked directly into the camera. I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was too jealous, too insecure, too possessive. It took meeting 6 other women with identical stories to realize I wasn't the problem. They were. The reporters asked questions. How did we meet? How did we discover the pattern? What did we want from the lawsuit? Justice, Whitney said simply. And to make sure they never do this to anyone else. The press conference made regional news. By that evening, it had gone national. 7 women exposed couples' decade-long pattern of abuse was trending on social media. People started coming forward with their own stories of Liam and Veronica. A woman who'd worked with Liam said he'd harassed her for months. A man who'd been friends with Veronica in college said she'd bragged about manipulating her boyfriends. The narrative was set. They couldn't spin this as jealous ex-girlfriends. There were too many of us. Too much evidence. Too many corroborating witnesses. The day before what should have been their wedding, I got a message from Liam. You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. I screenshot it and sent it to Isabel. Then I blocked his number. Veronica tried next, a long email about how we'd misunderstood everything, how they'd never meant to hurt anyone, how they were the real victims. I deleted it without responding. The wedding, of course, didn't happen. The venue had canceled their contract. The photographer and caterer had backed out. Most importantly, Liam's family and Veronica's family had pulled their support. Liam's mother actually reached out to Whitney to apologize. I had no idea, she wrote. I'm so sorry for what my son did to you. Veronica's sister contacted me. I should have known something was off. The way she talked about Liam's girlfriends. Like it was a game. I thought she was just being catty. I didn't realize it was intentional. The civil suit moved forward. Liam and Veronica hired separate lawyers, trying to turn on each other. Veronica claimed everything was Liam's idea. Liam claimed he was just following Veronica's lead. But the evidence showed they were equal partners in the abuse. Their shared journals, their coordinated plans, their mutual celebration of each woman's pain. 6 months after we filed, they settled. $43,000 split between the 7 of us. Written letters of apology that Isabel said were the most hollow she'd ever read. And most importantly, a legally binding agreement that they would not contact any of us ever again. They also had to complete mandatory therapy and community service focused on domestic violence awareness. But the legal settlement was almost beside the point. The real damage had already been done. Liam lost his job. His reputation in the finance world was destroyed. Last I heard, he was working as a sales associate at a cell phone store. Veronica was fired from HR. She'd become unemployable in her field. Her LinkedIn profile was flooded with warnings from women who'd looked up the lawsuit. They broke up 3 months after the wedding was canceled. Apparently, when the game stopped being fun and started having real consequences, they turned on each other. According to the investigator we kept on retainer, Liam moved back in with his parents. Veronica moved to another state, trying to start over with a new identity. But the internet doesn't forget. Our press conference video has over 2 million views. The news articles are the first thing that appears when you Google their names. The legal settlement is public record. They'll carry this with them forever. A year after the lawsuit settled, the 7 of us met again, not to talk about Liam and Veronica, but to celebrate. We'd all moved forward in different ways. Whitney had gotten engaged to a man she'd met in a support group for abuse survivors. She said he understood her trauma in a way no one else could. Britt had gone back to school and was finishing her degree in psychology, planning to specialize in helping victims of emotional abuse. Deshawn had written a book about her experience, changing names but telling the essential truth. It had found a small publisher and was getting good reviews. Tess had started a nonprofit helping women identify and escape manipulative relationships. She'd already helped dozens of people. Kendra had been promoted at her cybersecurity firm and was doing consulting work for law enforcement on digital stalking cases. And me? I'd finished my nursing degree and was working in a trauma ward. Every day, I helped people who'd been hurt, who needed someone to believe them and fight for them. I'd also started dating someone new, someone kind and patient who understood that I had trust issues and was willing to work through them with me. At our reunion dinner, we toasted not to revenge, but to survival. We could have stayed victims, Kendra said, raising her glass. We could have let them break us permanently. Instead, we fought back. We found each other. We built something stronger than what they destroyed. To us, Whitney said. To survivors, I added. We clinked glasses, 7 women who'd been strangers a year ago, now bonded by shared trauma and shared triumph. Later that night, I checked social media one last time. Veronica had created a new profile under a slightly different name. She'd posted a vague status about starting over and leaving the past behind. I could have screenshot it, could have sent it to the others, could have started the cycle of monitoring and documentation all over again. Instead, I blocked the profile and closed the app. They didn't deserve any more of my energy. They didn't deserve any more of my time. They'd taken enough. 18 months after the press conference, I got an unexpected message. It was from a woman I didn't know, asking if I was the person from the lawsuit against Liam and Veronica. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me respond. Yes, why? Her reply came quickly. I think he's doing it again. My friend started dating someone who matches his description. Same patterns, same manipulation tactics. I saw your press conference and recognized the behavior. My stomach dropped. I immediately forwarded the message to Kendra. She called me 5 minutes later. I was afraid of this. The settlement agreement said he couldn't contact any of us, I said. It didn't say he couldn't date other people. Exactly, and people like him don't change. They just get better at hiding. We called an emergency meeting of the 7. Within days, we'd tracked down the woman who'd messaged me. Her name was Chloe, and her friend Rachel had been dating someone named Liam for 3 months. He told her his ex-girlfriends were crazy, Chloe explained, that they'd made up stories about him and ruined his life. He has a new job, new apartment, new identity. He even dyed his hair. But the patterns are the same? Kendra asked. Identical. Love bombing, introducing his best friend who's clearly more than a friend, making Rachel feel jealous and possessive. I showed her your press conference, but he's convinced her you're all lying. We looked at each other. We'd thought it was over. We'd thought we'd stopped them. What do we do? Whitney asked. Isabel, who we'd kept on retainer, was clear. Legally, you can't contact him directly. That would violate the settlement agreement, but there's nothing preventing you from educating other women about warning signs of manipulative behavior. An idea started forming. What if we created a resource? I suggested. A website dedicated to recognizing and escaping emotionally abusive relationships. We could share our story as a case study without violating the agreement. Kendra's eyes lit up. And we could create a database of behavior patterns, red flags, common manipulation tactics, make it searchable so people can check if what they're experiencing matches known patterns. Tess jumped in. My nonprofit could host it. We're already a registered educational organization. It would be completely legal, Deshawn added. And I could adapt content from my book, create educational materials, worksheets, guides for identifying abuse. Within a month, we'd launched the website. We called it Pattern Recognition Project. It featured detailed information about emotional abuse, manipulation tactics, and recovery resources. Our story was there, anonymized but recognizable. 10 women over 8 years following identical patterns. The legal case that followed, the public exposure, the settlement. We didn't name Liam or Veronica. We didn't need to. Anyone who'd been following our case would recognize it immediately. But more importantly, anyone dating someone with similar patterns would see the red flags laid out in stark detail. The website went viral. Within weeks, we had tens of thousands of visitors. Women and men started sharing their own stories of manipulation and abuse. Support groups formed in the comments. People started recognizing their own situations in the patterns we described. And Rachel, the woman Chloe had been worried about, found the site. She reached out to us directly. I think I'm dating the man from your case study, she wrote. I didn't want to believe it, but everything matches. What do I do? We couldn't give her legal advice, but we could give her information, resources, support, the tools to make her own decision. 2 weeks later, she sent us an update. I confronted him about the patterns. He tried to gaslight me, said I was being paranoid, but I documented everything like your site suggested. I showed him the evidence of his manipulation. He couldn't explain it away. She'd broken up with him. She'd warned his best friend, not Veronica, but someone new playing the same role. She'd posted her story anonymously on our site. And most importantly, she'd reported him to her local domestic violence organization, creating a record that would exist if he tried this with anyone else. Liam tried to threaten legal action against our website, claiming defamation. Isabel shot it down immediately, pointing out that we hadn't named him and that everything on the site was either factual or clearly labeled as opinion. He backed off, but not before his lawyer's letters confirmed what we'd suspected. He was still out there, still playing the same games, still hurting people. But now there was a record. Now there were resources. Now there was a community of people who'd been through it and could help others recognize the patterns. 3 years after the lawsuit, I was living a life I never thought I'd have. I'd been promoted to head nurse at the trauma ward. I was in a healthy relationship with someone who communicated openly and respected my boundaries. I'd bought a small house with a garden where I grew vegetables on weekends. I still had panic attacks sometimes. Still had moments where I questioned my judgment. Still had days where the anger at what they'd done tried to consume me. But I also had therapy. I had support. I had 6 other women who understood exactly what I'd been through. And I had purpose. The Pattern Recognition Project had grown beyond anything we'd imagined. We'd helped hundreds of people identify and escape abusive relationships. We'd trained domestic violence counselors. We'd created educational materials used in high schools and colleges. We'd turned our trauma into something meaningful. Veronica reached out once more, 3 years after the lawsuit. A short email from a new address. I'm sorry, it said. I know you won't believe me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I've been in therapy for 2 years. Real therapy, not court-ordered. I've been diagnosed with several personality disorders I didn't even know I had. I'm working on myself. I'll never hurt anyone again. I sat with the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to ask questions, to know if she was really changed, but the bigger part of me knew it didn't matter. Her redemption wasn't my responsibility. Her healing wasn't my concern. I didn't owe her forgiveness or acknowledgement or anything at all. I deleted the email and went back to my life. 5 years after the lawsuit, Kendra called with news. Liam got arrested, she said. For what? Stalking, harassment, violation of a restraining order. Some woman he'd been dating filed charges after he broke into her apartment. My first reaction was satisfaction. He'd face legal consequences beyond our civil suit. He was in the system now. My second reaction was sadness for the woman he'd hurt. Another victim. Another person who'd have to rebuild herself. Did she know about our case? I asked. She did, Kendra said. She'd seen the website. She'd documented everything from day one. That's why she was able to get the restraining order and press charges so quickly. Our work helped her. That evening, I opened the Pattern Recognition Project website. The visitor counter had passed 1 million. The resource library had grown to hundreds of articles. The support forums were active 24 hours a day. In the testimonial section, hundreds of people had shared how the site had helped them recognize abuse, escape dangerous situations, and rebuild their lives. One comment stood out. I was dating someone who did everything described in the original case study. At first, I thought I was overreacting, but this site helped me see the patterns clearly. I got out before it got worse. I reported him to the police. I'm now in therapy and rebuilding my life. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story. You saved me. I screenshot it and sent it to our group chat. Whitney responded first. This is why we did it. Britt. Every person we help makes it worth it. Deshawn. We turned pain into purpose. Tess. We refused to stay victims. Kendra. We fought back. And me. We survived. 7 years after the lawsuit, I married my partner in a small ceremony surrounded by people who loved and supported me. The 6 other women from the case were there, not just as guests, but as chosen family. In my vows, I talked about trust, about how hard it had been to believe in people again after what happened, about how my partner had never once made me feel crazy for having boundaries, for needing reassurance, for taking things slowly. You gave me space to heal, I said, and you celebrated every step forward without pressuring me to move faster than I was ready for. That's what real love looks like. At the reception, my sister pulled me aside. Do you ever think about them? Sometimes, I admitted, but not the way I used to. Now when I think about Liam and Veronica, I don't feel anger or pain. I feel pity, I guess. They spent 8 years of their lives playing games and hurting people. They could have spent that time building something real. They wasted it. And what did you build? My sister asked. I looked around the room, my partner laughing with my friends. The 6 women who'd been strangers 8 years ago but were now some of my closest relationships. The career I'd built helping trauma survivors. The website that had helped thousands of people. I built a life, I said. A real one. 10 years after the lawsuit, I was invited to speak at a conference on emotional abuse and recovery. The Pattern Recognition Project had become a recognized resource in the field. Domestic violence organizations partnered with us. Therapists recommended our materials to clients. As I stood on stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I thought about the woman I'd been a decade ago. Confused, gaslighting, convinced something was wrong with me. I want to talk about what comes after, I told the audience. Everyone focuses on recognizing abuse and escaping it. Those are crucial first steps. But what happens next? How do you rebuild trust? How do you learn to have healthy relationships? How do you forgive yourself for not seeing it sooner? I shared my story, not just the abuse and the lawsuit, but what came after. The therapy, the setbacks, the moments of doubt, the gradual healing. Recovery isn't linear, I explained. Some days you feel strong and whole. Other days, a random trigger sends you spiraling. That's normal. That's part of the process. You don't have to be perfectly healed to move forward. During the Q&A, a young woman raised her hand. How do you know when you're ready to date again? I thought about my partner, about the patience and understanding it had taken to build our relationship. You start by learning to trust yourself again, I said. Not trusting that you'll never be hurt. That's impossible. But trusting that if something feels wrong, you'll listen to that feeling. Trusting that you can set boundaries and enforce them. Trusting that you deserve respect and honesty and real love. Another question. Do you ever regret going public? Making such a big deal out of it? No, I said firmly. Abuse thrives in silence. They counted on us being too embarrassed or ashamed to tell anyone. By going public, we took away their power, and we helped other people recognize the same patterns in their own lives. What would you say to someone who's still in an abusive relationship but isn't ready to leave? This was the hardest question, because I remembered being that person, knowing something was wrong but not wanting to believe it, making excuses, hoping things would change. I'd say, document everything. Even if you're not ready to leave now, start keeping records, screenshots, journals, whatever you can safely maintain. Because when you are ready to leave, you'll need that evidence. And I'd say, you're not crazy. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your instincts. After the conference, dozens of people approached me. Some wanted to share their stories, some wanted advice, some just wanted to say thank you. One woman pulled me aside, tears streaming down her face. I'm Rachel, she said, from 8 years ago, the one who messaged you about dating Liam after the lawsuit. I hugged her immediately. How are you? I'm good, she said. Really good. I finished my degree. I'm working at a nonprofit helping abuse survivors. I've been in therapy, and I'm in a healthy relationship now. But I wanted to thank you. If I hadn't found your website, if I hadn't seen the patterns laid out so clearly, I don't know where I'd be now. You saved yourself, I told her. We just gave you the tools. You gave me hope, she corrected. You showed me that survivors can become more than their trauma, that we can fight back, that we can win. 15 years after the lawsuit, the Pattern Recognition Project celebrated its 10th anniversary. The original 7 of us reunited for a gala fundraiser. We'd all gone in different directions, but we came together for this. Whitney brought her husband and 2 kids. She was practicing family law now, specializing in protecting abuse victims in custody cases. Britt had her PhD in psychology and was running a research lab studying manipulation tactics in relationships. Deshawn had written 3 more books and was a sought-after speaker on abuse recovery. Tess's nonprofit had expanded to 5 states, with dozens of employees and thousands of clients served. Kendra was consulting for the FBI on cases involving digital stalking and harassment. And me? I'd written my own book about the experience, which had become required reading in several social work programs. I still worked at the hospital, but I also taught courses on recognizing and treating trauma in medical settings. At the gala, we presented the first annual Pattern Recognition Awards to people who'd done exceptional work in the field of abuse prevention and recovery. As I stood on stage with my 6 chosen sisters, I felt overwhelming gratitude, not for what we'd been through, but for what we'd built from it. 15 years ago, I said into the microphone, 7 women discovered they'd been victimized by the same couple. We could have stayed silent. We could have let shame and embarrassment keep us isolated. Instead, we found each other. We fought back, and we turned our trauma into a resource that has helped thousands of people. I looked at the 6 women beside me. This work has been the honor of my life, not because of what we survived, but because of what we created. We proved that survivors can become warriors, that victims can become advocates, that pain can be transformed into purpose. The audience stood and applauded, but I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the woman I'd been 15 years ago, holding that phone with Liam's messages, trying to figure out if she was crazy. I wished I could go back and tell her, you're not crazy, you're not overreacting, you're not the problem. And 15 years from now, you'll be standing on a stage with 6 other survivors, having built something beautiful from something broken. 20 years after the lawsuit, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Veronica's sister, the one who'd reached out to me all those years ago. I thought you should know. The the letter said. Veronica passed away last month. Overdose. Accidental, they said, but I'm not sure. She'd been struggling for years. Never really recovered from everything that happened. Never forgave herself. The letter continued. I know you don't owe her anything, but I wanted you to know that she did change in the end. She spent her last 5 years volunteering at women's shelters, helping abuse victims. She could never undo what she did to you and the others, but she tried to make amends in other ways. I sat with that information for a long time. I felt complicated. Not sad. Exactly. Not satisfied either. Just a strange hollowness where anger used to live. I called Kendra. Did you hear about Veronica? I did, she said. How do you feel? I don't know. Relieved? Sad? Nothing? All of the above, probably. It's okay to have mixed feelings about it. Do you think she really changed? Kendra was quiet for a moment. Does it matter? She's gone. Whether she found redemption or not doesn't change what she did to us, and it doesn't change what we built in response. She was right. Veronica's story was over. Ours continued. I never found out what happened to Liam. I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved overseas, trying to escape his reputation. Someone said he'd gotten married, divorced, married again. Someone else said he'd been arrested again, in another country, for similar behavior. But I didn't look him up, didn't check social media or Google his name. He wasn't worth my energy anymore. 25 years after the lawsuit, I retired from nursing. My partner and I moved to a small coastal town where I spent my days gardening, writing, and video calling with my chosen family. The Pattern Recognition Project was still going strong, now run by a younger generation of survivors and advocates. I served on the advisory board, but I'd stepped back from day-to-day operations. On the anniversary of the lawsuit being filed, the 7 of us had a tradition of video calling. We'd catch up, share updates, remember where we'd been, and celebrate how far we'd come. This year, Whitney announced she'd been appointed to a judgeship. Britt had just published a groundbreaking study on long-term effects of emotional abuse. Deshawn's latest book had hit the bestseller list. Tessa's nonprofit had expanded internationally. Kendra was teaching cybersecurity courses at a major university. We did okay, I said, smiling at my screen full of familiar faces. We did more than okay, Kendra corrected. We turned the worst thing that ever happened to us into the most meaningful work of our lives. To us, Whitney said, raising her glass. To survivors, we all echoed. After the call ended, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. My partner came out with 2 cups of tea and sat beside me. You okay? They asked. More than okay, I said. I was just thinking about how different my life could have been if I'd never found those messages on Liam's phone, if I'd never connected with the other women, if we'd all just stayed silent and tried to move on alone. But you didn't. No, we didn't. We refused to let them get away with it. And in the process, we found each other. We built something bigger than our individual trauma. We created a legacy. My partner squeezed my hand. You should be proud. I am, I said. Not of what we survived, but of what we built. Of who we became. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I thought about the 25-year journey from victim to survivor, to advocate to, finally, just person. A person who'd been through something terrible and come out the other side stronger. The Pattern Recognition Project would outlive all of us. The resources we'd created, the community we'd built, the lives we'd touched. That would continue long after we were gone. And maybe that was the best revenge of all. Not destruction or punishment, but creation. Taking what was meant to break us and using it to build something that would help thousands of others. Liam and Veronica had tried to make us disposable, placeholders, temporary entertainment in their twisted game. Instead, we'd become immortal. Our story, our work, our impact, that would last forever. We'd won. Not just in court, not just in public opinion, but in the most fundamental way possible. We'd turned pain into purpose, trauma into transformation, and victims into victors. And in doing so, we'd ensured that what happened to us could never happen to anyone else without them having the resources, the knowledge, and the community to fight back. That was our legacy. That was our victory. That was our revenge.